Good morning, and thank you for joining us this morning at our City Council study session. We'll go ahead and get started. Ruth, could you please call the roll?
Yes, sir. Adamson? Here. Gray?
Here.
Cheatham?
Here.
Lurick?
Here.
Johnston?
Here.
Manon?
Here.
Flatt?
Here. Thank you. We'll go ahead and move on to agenda item number 2, which is Riverside Golf Course Hydraulic Evaluation Updates. Water Department staff will be present to provide an update on the Riverside Golf Course hydraulic evaluation and an alternative solution that was amended to the previous briefing provided by Bowen Collins. Morning.
Good morning. Thanks, Mayor and Council, for allowing us to present today. I'm joined with, I'm Justin Armstrong, Water Superintendent. I'm joined with Skylar Allen with the Engineering Department, and Harold Hargraves, who's our Operations Supervisor. As discussed, we're going to talk today about an amended solution that was not previously presented in the prior study that was presented back in December 14, 2017. So, as a recap, Bowen and Collins was contracted by the city to provide a golf course hydraulic evaluation of the irrigation system and the supplies that feed that. They presented to the council on December 14th, 2017. The evaluation considered various options proposed by both parties, both Water Department and golf course management that run in operations. Some of the solutions that were discussed in that were adjusting the irrigation programming to adjust for sudden demand changes within the sprinkler control systems, installing a pressure regulating valve or PRV on the Cree well transmission line, installing a variable frequency drive at the Cree well, or installing both the PRV and a VFD at the Cree well. So the purpose of the study was to identify a definitive solution that would help address the pressure transients or surges that would cause pipeline breaks within the irrigation system. So, within that initial recommendation, and first let me just kind of explain how the golf course irrigation system is supplied. So I apologize for the figure, it's a little small on the screen, but currently there are 2 supplies that feed the golf course. So the primary supply comes from Lundberg Lane. At the south end, it's fed through a 12-inch line and a 4-inch meter that supplies the low flows, kind of the initial startup of the irrigation system. Then, as demands increase in the irrigation zone, that supply is augmented by the Cree well, and that picks up and can produce a total of 1,950 gallons per minute through the entire golf course system. So within that solution, they recommended to install a variable frequency drive at the Cree well, which would allow the Cree well to ramp up and slowly provide flow as needed and adjust. And then installing a PRV about midway through on the transmission line that feeds into the golf course to kind of smooth that transition with firing that well up. And then within the irrigation system, it was recommended that they add a 250-gallon surge tank within the systems to still soften the blows of those demand changes that just naturally occur with sprinkler system shutdown. The total estimated cost on that improvement was $155,000. So we asked the question, are there other options? One of the assumptions that was made within the evaluation before is that Cree well could only supply irrigation water. That's due to its history. Previously, back in the early 1990s, the Cree well was affected by TCE, or trichloroethylene contamination plume, that was contaminating several wells on the south end of town. Since some of the remediation efforts by the county, a lot of those levels have dropped and are well below the maximum contaminant level, and so we can bring some of those sources back online. We've currently got a supply further down that we've tested and been monitoring, and it's ready to go and in standby operation as demands increase. So we asked Bowen and Collins what would happen if we were to supply all of the golf course irrigation from the primary line on Lundberg Lane. There's already a 12-inch line, there's already an existing PRV, and what would that look like? So the connection is already in place. It would utilize the existing drinking water system, which is currently balanced and buffered, and would have the same benefit as a VFD. And then we can activate, since we're taking that demand off of 14, which primarily kind of functions and supplies some of that water, that demand would need to be picked up somewhere else. The system can handle it. Skylar has modeled that, looked at it. So the increase in demand would not affect the current system. And if it does, we can activate well 33 that's been in standby mode in operation. It's the same capacity as well 14. And it provides some other benefits as demands increase. So that allows us to utilize Cree well in the future as demands increase, and it fits within our facility planning studies as well. So within that alternative option, I'll let Skylar explain some of that process and what we've found.
Sure. So as you can see on the alternative option, it's a very similar figure to the one that was previously presented. We have the well 14, or the Cree well right here. That would be removed from the irrigation supply, and instead in the future it would be connected directly into the potable water system on Bannock Highway. The well that Justin mentioned, well 33, is located a little bit further to the south on Bannock Highway. That one is the one that he is currently in standby and would be moved into more of a higher priority for operation as the demand requires in this portion of the system. The existing connection on Lundberg Lane right here, we'll be modifying the existing PRV vault that's in there. PRV is a pressure regulating valve. It steps down the pressure from a higher pressure to a more consistent lower pressure. The current pressure in the system right here at the service ranges from at maximum day demand, on the maximum day demand day, it ranges from 92 psi to 118, just depending on tank levels and which pumps are on. And so that pressure regulating valve would kind of normalize that pressure to basically whatever pressure the golf course deems necessary to provide their service. So if they choose, for example, 85 psi, that pressure regulating valve would be set to deliver that pressure at whatever demand their system is asking of it. As the demand increases, the pressure would drop and the valve would open to increase the supply and maintain that consistent pressure. It provides that boundary, that balancing and buffering that they were looking for with the previous solution, which was going to be provided by having the VFD, which can smoothly adjust the delivery flow and pressure of the pump, together with the VFD, which was there to protect the irrigation system from those changes in the pump as well, and also protect the pump from the changes in the irrigation system. So we get the same effects using the existing distribution system and the tanks that we already have to get that leveling of the supply pressure and flow, and then the PRV to normalize that flow and pressure as it comes into their system. And then we still require the 250 gallon a minute or 250 gallon surge tank in the golf course irrigation system. The purpose of that is to buffer the changes that they're making in the controls of the irrigation system. So as valves turn on and a sudden demand happens, or valves turn off and a sudden decrease in demand happens, that results in some drastic changes in the pressure. And that pressure tank would absorb some of that pressure change. And hopefully the concept is, and what Bo and Collins has sized that tank for, is to be able to absorb enough of that pressure change that we would avoid the same kind of pipe breakage that the golf course irrigation system has seen in the past. We believe this system is equivalent to what was proposed initially in terms of the things that it provides to the system. And it comes at a significant cost savings over what we would have seen under the other solution. So on this next slide, you can see the previous solution, option 1. We had the variable frequency drive on well 14, or the Cree well, estimated cost of $40,000. A pressure regulating valve, a new one, which would require an underground vault and a fair amount of pipe and fittings, and those valves are big and heavy and expensive, and that comes at a cost of about $90,000. This was estimated by Bo and Collins in the report. And then the 250 gallon pressure tank, that's a bladder tank, located somewhere on the golf course, and that's at $25,000. So the total there, $155,000. The alternative solution that we're discussing today and proposing that we implement now is to utilize that existing supply line and the PRV that's there with some modifications. Those modifications would include upgrading the meter at that location so that it can accurately meter the wider range of demand that we would see there, and then provide a secondary 4-inch PRV, 12-inch PRV that's in place. That's a really big valve that has a capacity that's recommended for a minimum flow of 50 gallons a minute. So 50 gallons a minute is pretty large on that line, and we want to be able to still manage the pressures at flows that are lower than that. And to do that, we would put in a bypass line and a 4-inch PRV to handle that low flow condition. And that comes at a cost of about $3,000. And then upgrading the meter at about $7,000. The bladder tank remains the same as previous, and then activating well 33, that's essentially ready to go, but bringing that well into a more primary condition rather than as a standby condition would require about $1,000 of annual water quality testing in order to have that well online and ready to use at any time. And then in the future, we would look at the Cree well, which we would be disconnecting from the irrigation system, as a future supply well into the culinary water system. We're estimating that in order to reconfigure that well to deliver into the Bannock Highway portion of the potable water system, we would need to additionally add a chlorine disinfection system at that well, and we're estimating that cost would be about $25,000. That's a future cost that would come when we see the need for that additional supply in that area. And we would look to do that over the next few years to get that well into that standby condition that the well 33 further down the highway is currently filling that role. So the cost there, including this future cost of $25,000, $61,000, brings us to our estimated savings there, the total initial savings there of $119,000 over the initial recommended solution from Bo and Collins. We believe that this alternative option removes all of the problematic factors that were associated with the Cree well that the Riverside golf course was seeing in their irrigation system. Their major problem was handling the delay time in the starting and stopping of that well, which resulted in some pretty significant buildup of the pressure before the well got the signal and managed to go through its shutdown cycle. And then on startup, they saw some pretty low pressures before the well got the signal and was able to start. And then when the well started, because it's a it did not have a variable frequency drive, the startup surge from that pump would hit the irrigation system, if you may remember some of that discussion from previously. But removing the Cree well from supplying directly into the irrigation system would eliminate all of those factors, because we would be using the existing distribution system, which has large tanks and other supply wells, to balance and buffer all of those pressure changes from the change in demand at the golf course, providing the same benefits as putting the VFD on the Cree well at a significant cost savings, $119,000. This does simplify somewhat the irrigation system supply and the operating requirements, as it would be a single supply point rather than the dual supply point that they were using before. The operating requirements for them, then with the pressure regulating valve, they have some additional control that they can adjust the pressure that they're receiving at that delivery point, so that they can target the management of their irrigation system to that exact pressure point that is delivered from the Lundberg connection point. It would then free up the Cree well to be used as a reserve culinary water supply, and increases the total pumping capacity in that portion of the system. So currently the Cree well is only used in the summer for irrigation, but under this scenario it would be available year-round as a backup supply in the winter months for that portion of the water system. It increases the total pumping capacity of the water system, which is something we're continually looking to do as we have different contamination concerns at other places. We need to have those reserve supplies that we can turn to if we have to shut down a well in another location, which we have had that concern in the past and that situation arise. This does fit within the 5-year facility plan. That well further down, well 33, was on track to be brought online in the next few years. We're just moving that time frame up a little bit, and then we'll move the Cree well into that reserve capacity position within the water system.
The other thing that came about with the prior presentation back in December was what was happening with some mysterious water consumption that was on track with some of the testing. What our investigation found was that there is a summer irrigation line that is tapped off of the golf course water system. That demand serves 3400 South Bannock Highway. And the city entered into an agreement back in 1994 to supply irrigation water. It was with the assumption that we were using that water. It was not potable water, and they were using some of the Meat Creek surface water supplies at that time. So we entered into an agreement that had a special water rate, consumption rate on that for the non-potable connection. And we are tracking that consumption. That account is sub-metered from the irrigation system, and it's credited back. And so all of that consumption is being tracked. It's just, it wasn't factored into the modeling analysis once. And so it was revealing that. So anyways, it was a good little exercise to go through to find it. To find that contract. I wasn't fully up to speed on that contract at the time because it was dated before my time, but anyways.
Okay. Does that contract go on forever?
I'm not sure. We'll have to look into that. I don't know if it's a perpetual agreement or not. But
it seems that hooking into our system was a temporary fix, not a solution.
Right. And I think by going to this other solution, that kind of changes the game a little bit.
Okay.
But we need to renegotiate that.
So I guess I've got a couple questions. I thought we approved as a council a remedy that was proposed by an engineering study that cost a significant amount of dollars. How did that not happen after we approved it?
We looked at, well, there was this question still in the back of our mind. And so we had to ask the question because we felt that there was still a void in that. And so We asked the question. Bowen Collins provided an answer because, like I said, that solution was only looking at the current operation. We felt like there was an alternative that was some cost savings that would actually benefit both parties and simplify the operation of the system. And so I think, our primary goal is to evaluate the system, find the lowest cost solution for all of our ratepayers, and find that. So that's kind of where we are today.
Well, when I read this through, which is the first time I've seen it is up here, I see a lot of words like may, could, if it could, as part of the Bowen Collins response to this proposal. Doesn't sound like it guarantees anything. We had a study that said we'll fix the problem on the golf course. Now then, we've proposed a different alternative. Bowen Collins has reviewed it, and there's a lot of words in here that indicate they're not committed to this, in my mind. When you see words like may, if it could, those type of things, those aren't solutions that they're agreeing with. They're saying, might be a good idea, we don't know, in my estimation.
Can I?
Sure.
Yeah. So you're referencing what's common in engineering reports. Engineers don't like to predict the future unless we're very confident that it's going to be there. And I know that's what they're doing with those mays and coulds. What we're seeing for this alternative solution is we believe that this solution will resolve the concerns at the golf course in a method that doesn't constrain us from taking the other actions that were in the initial recommendation in the future if those cans and shoulds and maybes don't pan out for some reason. We think that they will. We have a pretty high confidence that they will. The coulds and mays mainly pertain to if we can bring the Cree well into use for potable water supply. So if that's something that we can do, if the water quality allows us to do that, if we're able to install the chlorination system to be able to bring it into supply, if we're able to reconfigure that well to be able to deliver at the flow and pressure of the existing system. We believe we can do all of those things, and by taking this action, if that doesn't prove to be the case, we still would have the option of installing the VFD and returning that Cree well to irrigation water supply under the initial recommended solution. So we have the opportunity to explore this just a little bit, try this option at a much reduced cost, and if it doesn't work out, we haven't committed ourselves to a solution yet. We could still go back to that initial recommended solution and spend the additional money and bring that solution in.
If I may, if I remember our discussion on this, a lot of the council wasn't here. I think there are only three of us on the mayor. This was a solution to a long-ranging problem that had never really been adequately dealt with. And we felt like we were compelled to help the golf course not have so much maintenance problem. And that's why we improved moving forward, because it was slamming the lines with the hammer effect out there, and it was breaking the system down. And we were trying to fix a problem that was some part on the design of the irrigation system, a large part on our delivery to them. And it just seems like we did a study, we had a solution proposed. I thought you guys were part of that discussion, and now we've revisited with another proposal that's just part of this discuss and not solve. And because we're looking at some proposed solutions, like in engineering terms, this might fix it, okay? And I guess when we get a study, we feel like that was the end-all thing to fix it, and now we're back to might again. And, I felt like we approved it. And the other question I have, how have we looked at the design of the irrigation system itself to see if our solution is compatible with the design of the irrigation system inside the golf course. My understanding is when we go from from 2 delivery points to 1, we're going to override a system that has a series of reductions in it to help with pressure and flow within the system. We had 2 points of entry for our water. Now we're going to have 1, and it invalidates some of the design in the system. Can you speak to that?
So I have not analyzed the golf course irrigation system. That was done by Bowen Collins as part of their report. And your point is valid, that it does change the operating conditions for the irrigation system. In the past, the golf course has operated the entire system off of that single supply point at Lundberg Lane. And to our knowledge, there haven't been those type of problems under that operation condition. So we believe that they can do that again and make that permanent in their operation structure of the irrigation
So
system.
there is a history of the one service point that we're not using right now. So why wasn't the solution to go back to the one that worked?
Sure. So part of the history here was the initial assumption from Bowen Collins that the Cree well could not be used as potable water. And that would have been true in the past because of that contamination issue. And that's a large part of why this system was constructed to do what it's doing today, right? To use that water that's not good enough for potable use because of the TCE contamination in an irrigation situation where that's not a concern. And we've seen those contamination levels drop. It hasn't been until just the past few years when those contamination levels have dropped to the point where the water department has felt that it was worth looking at bringing those supplies back.
And you feel like we have a history of the hydraulics in the whole system of both high water years and low water years to know that we weren't just diluting it with some of our high water years, and that maybe it will return to a less diluted situation like a low water year we're in right now.
That's certainly a possibility, and we know that the Port Neuf Aquifer moves fairly quickly. We only know what we can see from those snapshots of the tests that we take in those wells, because everything's happening underground. But the history we can see is that 10 years ago, those contamination levels were high. As the landfill was the source of that plume, and as they implemented their groundwater control solution, and it began to take effect, we saw those levels begin to drop, and they're continuing on that same trajectory right now. If that turns around for some reason, it's always possible that could happen. It's possible. There's a lot of things that are possible.
Yeah, well, we've had some pretty high water years.
Sure.
And the old saying, the solution to pollution is dilution. But if it's leaking the same into our aquifer, but we're getting less supplied to our aquifer. In other words, the contaminant's coming in at the same rate, but we're not diluting it at the same rate. I could see it really ballooning up again, especially this year.
Yeah.
Well, we've been tracking that since 2008. Well, actually prior to that, but since 2008, we made some of the initial steps to bring well 33 online. We've logged a history at that location, been routinely sampling, and that trend has not changed within that time period. And so there's been a lot of seasonal fluctuation between that time period that provide us enough confidence that this will work.
Councilman.
Justin and Skylar and Harold, I really appreciate what you brought to us today. Anytime we can save nearly $100,000, that's significant. And so thank you for your efforts. The one question I have is maybe outside of this, but at one point, Mr. Mayor, we were talking about using some gray water to water the golf courses. Is that anything we're considering or contemplating, or would it have any impact on what we're doing today?
Yeah, so to supply that with gray water, we would have to build a very large pipeline from the treatment plant all the way south. There's opportunities there to pick up other parks along the way. It's not something that the engineering department has looked at in great detail to see what some of those costs and that would provide. But I can tell you today, we're looking at a lot more cost than just
The reason for my concern is with an estimated 20,000 additional people coming into the community within the next X number of years, we just have to be prepared in terms of making sure we have enough water. And if the gray water is a solution, maybe that's something we should continually be evaluating and exploring. Thank you.
I have a question down here.
Good job. I appreciate the reconsideration of the problem, the saving of $91,000. Is there any compromise we're making? Anything we're giving up?
We don't believe so. This allows us a lot more flexibility within our system because we have additional sources that we can utilize. You know, the 12-inch supply, it was set as a secondary connection anyways. In case that well had an equipment failure or anything else, it could solely supply that golf course. This just simplifies the operation completely. It's no different than the way we supply Highland Golf Course or any other park or irrigation system. So it really simplifies things a lot.
Has this solution been discussed with the golf course?
I've discussed it with John a little bit, but with golf course personnel, no.
I see Brian in the background. Any questions, Brian, about how it might work?
Brian, if you're going to speak, why don't you come up here to the table, introduce yourself.
He's serious when he takes his
He takes his hat off. We'll pull a chair over.
Gerald had better come up.
You can have my spot. I'm glad to come up too.
Why don't you both come up? This is impacting you a lot.
We got a chair right there, Skylar. You can sit down there. We got a chair sitting next to it. I think we can get both of you on TV.
We've always wanted to be on TV.
You're going to be famous now, so.
So I appreciate your question that you brought up about...
Brian, if you would introduce yourself.
Sorry. Brian Sprague. I'm the Green Superintendent for 4 Golf Incorporated. We've been there close to 18 years now. We've been working with both courses, and so I'm very aware of the irrigation problems that we've felt on our end of things. And, you know, I think there's a real simplistic view of this for me in a lot of ways, and that's just that the original system was engineered by Coates, I believe is the actual engineering firm, and there was a lot of money paid for that, and it was designed on a 2-source system. And that was what I've thought when I first walk into a facility. I look at the diagram. Our system is built and designed to run off of what that engineer has put in place. And if there's any changes made to that, well, my computer system doesn't know that until it's being told by someone that it's changed. I could put the time and effort into doing that, but it costs money, and it's, you know, that's one of the expenses that aren't included in this, is that, you know, there's probably another $15,000 for a system change on the hydraulic diagram that's put into the computer. The computer's going to have to be updated to change for an engineering change. I also saw where the pressure regulating valve was taken out. So when I'm looking at a map, as I walk into a facility and I think, okay, this is how our system runs. I've got to fix brakes over here and here. I got to know how to isolate it, fix it, turn things on and off. We ran into a lot of problems by turning. Boy, I just could go on and on. I apologize. I don't want to get into the weeds, but we were never informed about the pressure regulating valve being taken out. Those are major changes that someone should have had engineered, in my opinion, than to just make those kind of changes. And I'm looking on the working end of this, and I've seen my guys fix, you know, upwards of 90 brakes a season because of this issue. And that's very frustrating. And I feel like there were some simple fixes in to try to save money, to get back to the point I was starting with. put in a variable speed pump. Over the 15, 18 years we've been there, it could have paid for itself. It may not fix a problem, but I was trying to work with someone to try to make this problem go away, and was frankly told that I didn't know my job or how to run my system. And that was very frustrating. And John, and whether it was for this issue or not, John Banks he's good for this community. He's one first-class guy. And he also has taken it upon himself to try to help out my employers, and I thought he went about it in a really fair way. It cost us another $15,000, give or take, on another engineer to come and look at it. But it was all under the understanding, well, Brian, if you're wrong, you understand we're going to go with this. Water department, if you're wrong, you got to understand, you know, we're going to go with what they say. Okay, seems like a waste of a lot of money to put in a variable speed pump to try to help things, but okay. And so now here I am again trying to be aware of the issues that can still take place without an engineer truly. I think the whys and how comes and ifs and maybes comes about because they weren't paid to do another part of this same, you know, they agreed to come on and make a study based on what was before them. They make that study, and then there was changes that I think could have been approached and worked on before we paid for the study. So that's my concern of worrying about that money being spent for an engineer and then kind of changed. And I'm not afraid that there could still be a solution, but I know that and our councilman brought it up, the two sources of water where they come in, if the original engineering was for two, which is what my plans show, and you change it to one, I know there's some hydraulic issues that go from, you know, basically in a system, everything kind of ramps down in pipe size as you go into the system. Well, if you're trying to feed it from just one source, it's going to go ramping down, and then it's got to ramp back up to a bigger pipe, and then ramp down again. So when we were first there, before we had big issues, the first 5 years I worked there, we had low pressure situations, very low water pressures, and I was told, no, we don't. I had to go out and try to fight with that part of the problem, and there was a lot of, I mean, we had a farmer tied into the system. We were trying to figure this stuff out. And I was literally out taking pressure samples myself, and we were as little as 15 and 18 PSI on our system.
So, Brian, I want to get back to the question. I can appreciate the history, and I can appreciate all of that. But the question, I believe, was, have you been informed about this, and what concerns do you have with this? And I have a real quick question. We were on two systems. We went to one system. When we went to the one system, did that create more of a problem than we had when we were on the two systems?
No, it helped, but it didn't solve the problem completely.
Okay, so it helped when we were on the one system, not the two systems.
Correct.
Okay, so our concern with going from two to one system now is probably minimal at this point, in my mind, if it helped in the past.
Well, when I say helped, I mean we didn't have as many breakages.
Okay.
But we still had low water pressure issues, inconsistent amount of. So each individual head out there has to run at 65 PSI to operate properly.
Okay.
And if it's run lower or higher, obviously if it's designed to run in an 8-hour period at night, the entire system, and it's not up to snuff on the amount of pressure, it still will turn, and the grass won't die right away, but you begin to get what I'd call like bullseye targets, you know, right, green circles and brown circles. And
sure. I'm usually
that to me was operating pretty well compared to breakages all the time. So that's still the concern of mine.
So let's talk about the low pressure that you had before. Why was there a low pressure, and have you done anything? Skylar, you're the one that's been engineering this and been in the middle of it. There was low pressure before when it was one system. Is it because of the 12-inch pipe? Is it because of what? How are we mitigating that issue? Maybe I don't know.
I'm not aware of the history there. I don't know if these guys...
Yeah, I think part of the low pressure situation kind of dated back to some of the supply on the Cree well in the past, where we didn't have some of the additional bowls that we added onto it and improved the pressure. Like Brian stated before, the system was working better when it was supplied from that. Less of the breaks were happening. By adding that 250-gallon tank that they still recommend, improving that improves the whole situation, and the system still acts as a VFD. And so Bowen and Collins had amended their previous plan on February, and that's all included. And I'm not sure if John had shared that with the golf course administration or not, but anyways, I'd be more than happy to share that study with them, and you know, they have signed off on that this other amended solution as well as an alternative. So,
Carol.
Mayor, Council, first want to thank you all for taking a look at this issue. We, by no means are we against saving money.
I'm going to interrupt you. Would you introduce yourself so people at home know?
I'm Gerald Myler. I'm co-owner of 4Golf, who runs has the contract to operate the golf course, the 2 golf courses. We'd love to save money. We just need a proven solution. The problem and the frustration that you might hear in some of our voices is we've been fighting, battling, discussing with the water department for 17 years basically, because the system was not, the elements to the system as it was engineered were not included in the delivery of our water. So we were having problems with low water pressure initially, then with breakages, 96 breakages on average for roughly the last decade per year. We figured the cost of that in labor and in parts has been roughly $65,000 to 4Golf over the past 12 years, actually over the past 17 years. We've gone to the water department on numerous occasions and explained what we believe the problem to be. And Brian has a background in water management, so he's very well versed. We just got pushback. No, that's not the problem. That's not the problem. That's not it. That's not it. Year after year after year, until the frustration built to the point where we asked John if there was anything we could do. The solution was to go out and hire experts, water engineers that could do a study. And the city paid roughly $15,000 for that study. And the agreement was that if they came back and said, yes, 4Golf, what you've been telling everybody is correct, then the city would pay for re-engineering of the system or engineering the system to provide water as it was supposed to. If the city was right and what they've been saying for all these years that no, you don't have any problem, you're causing it yourself with the way you operate it, then we would shut up and go do our jobs. Well, the study came back in our favor. And now they're asking to change what was agreed to. And I'm fine with that if they can prove that it will work. If we can save $100,000, fantastic. That's great for you, it's great for me, it's great for everybody. But we can't go on another 1, 2, 3 years dealing with the same problem, having all these costs from breakages accrue to 4Golf, which by the way lost $30,000 operating the golf courses last year. So we need a solution. It should have happened 15, 17 years ago. We just want to have something that works.
So I know that when we had Bowen and Collins here, we asked them for if this was a 100% bulletproof, sure fix, we won't have any issues, and they said yes, it was. With this amendment that we've done, can we say it was 100% bulletproof? Because I remember talking about, there were 2 solutions. In fact, we talked about a number of different things. If we only did this, what would happen? And if we only did this, what would happen? If we did a combination of 1 or 2 of these things, what would happen? And they said all of those would help, but this is the solution we guarantee will work. I don't know what that guarantee means, if they'll come out and reimburse the city for all the expenses, or if they'll pay 4Golf's fixes, I don't know, but that was their guarantee, was 100% it will work. They wouldn't say that if we only did 2 of the 3 options. So I guess my question is this a guarantee it's going to work? And then if the answer to that is yes, what does that guarantee mean for golf?
If I can respond. So in the course of developing both the initial report and the amendment to the report, I've had conversations with their hydraulic modelers about what we're doing here. When we brought it back to considering again, well, what if we revisit the assumption on Cree-Well and look at this alternative solution? Their response was, yeah, that should provide the same functional delivery system hydraulically that we're trying to accomplish with the VFD on the well. You're absolutely right, Mayor, that the initial analysis of this problem stated that both sides of the equation, both the irrigation system and the water supply side, were contributing to the problem, and both needed modifications in order to fully address the problem of pipe breakage, which is why the surge tank is still needed in the irrigation for both solutions, because part of the problem is generated from within the golf course system itself. The supply side concern from the well changes can be addressed by this alternative solution. Functionally, by installing a PRV on the supply line from the well, you're trying to isolate the irrigation system from the supply line and provide a barrier there, a buffer there, to protect the system against any pressure surges generated at the well itself. And by taking the well out of that picture and just having the distribution system supplying on that PRV, we eliminate all of those concerns with the surges caused by the well itself. As I mentioned before, this alternative solution doesn't constrain us against future things that might need to be done. If it does turn out that the golf course can't get the adequate pressures at some portion of the system in the future, we could look at, rather than the well itself, we could have two supply points with two PRVs off of the main line without a lot of piping change. But that would put us back to that $90,000 PRV vault, which is a significant cost. I would also point out that the programming changes are within this report addressed at every point as a potential thing that will need to be addressed under both the initial recommended solution and the alternative solution.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
You said that this, if we try this less expensive solution, that it doesn't lock us in, that we can still go back and do the other one later. But does that mean we'd be spending the money on this solution and then the additional 155 again? So we're still, we'd be spending a lot more that way.
Sure. So if I understand the question correctly, it's which path are we committing ourselves to spending money and at the front? And the answer to that is the initial proposed solution would be the one where we would have the highest expenditure that would not be recoverable if that solution didn't pan out. This proposed alternative would save that initial cost, and without constraining us from being able to make those adjustments in the future if we need to continue to address this problem.
But if we need to make them in the future, are we going to go back then and spend the money we would have spent anyway? So now we're spending an additional $61,000?
So,
okay.
So the only additional cost right now would be the meter change and a smaller PRV. And so those costs were
about 10,000.
Yeah, it was about 10,000 between the two.
And we're getting the Cree well back on the potable system.
Correct.
And I am still concerned about that too. Are you very comfortable that downward trend in the TCEs will continue?
Yeah.
There's no guarantee, I guess.
In 3 of the sampling wells that we have in that adjacent area, they're all well below the MCL, and they've shown that trend throughout the last 10 years.
10 years.
So I can appreciate it, and I just want everybody to know that we are all about saving as much money as we can. but I don't want to charge or cost our concessionaire out there a bunch of money to try something. And so I'm still stuck on this. Is it really going to work, or is it a trial and error thing for us? And if it really is the trial and error, and we find out that it's an error, we just heard from our concessionaire that it's cost them $65,000 over the last few years to 12 years, 10 years?
Throughout the length of the contract, so about 17.
About 17 years. So are we prepared to help with that? And this change will cost them $15,000? I mean, is that a solid number, or are you just pulling it out of the sky, Brian?
That's reasonably close, but without purchasing at the date of, I think it's around 10 to 15,000 to replace the computer system and have an engineer do the rebooting of the hydraulics.
And my real question is there a reason why they have to do all that with their computer system, as far as we know?
Well, some of that system, when it was initially designed, was being fed from creek water.
Okay.
And so that PRV that was originally taken out, like Brian had stated, was because of the creek supplies coming down through the system. That PRV was removed because that line was no longer utilized. And so the system has never really been updated fully with the Cree well supplies and everything else. So regardless, I think there's some reprogramming that's going to happen, and that's been stated within the report. The other thing is Bowen and Collins has endorsed that and included that within their amended solution that was within this technical memorandum dated February 26th. I'm not sure if you guys have the latest copy of that or not.
Yeah, we've got it received February 26th.
So is it safe to say that Bowen and Collins feels just as comfortable with this amended proposal as they did with the other one, or did they still feel like it was kind of better?
There was a few questions that had to be answered, like Skylar suggested, plugging into the system, because they didn't have the full model of our water system to know how that would react. And so those are those big ifs, and if this were to happen, and so they couldn't fully confirm that without that information. So Skylar validated with them, as well as providing that feedback. And so
I would say that their reservations about this alternative are almost entirely about the water system and not the golf course system. So their confidence that this will address the concerns of the golf course system, I would say is equal for the two solutions. And this proposed alternative we're discussing today would shift any uncertainty that there is mostly to the water department and the water supply side of the equation.
So what would be the timeline on getting this change?
To make some of those changes, we've already got some of the parts within our inventory, and so we can make those changes very simply without shutting down the system or causing impact to the golf course and installing these large vaults or anything. We're utilizing the existing vaults that are outside of the golf course, so that could happen within the next 30 days.
They had to order some of these pieces and parts, and have those orders come in yet or not?
Well, the meter was actually already ordered because we needed to make some improvements to that meter. It wasn't capturing some of the lower flows within that range, and so that meter was already in place and on order, and I think we're anticipating the delivery of that next week. So we've got a 4-inch PRV that was ordered for another job, but that job's not until later July, and so we could get another part to replace that.
So what I'm hearing is by mid-June, this new system ought to be up and running. Golf course has to do the bladder tank. It has to do some reprogramming to be compatible with those changes. But
we're doing the bladder tank.
Yeah, but I mean the golf course side of it.
Yeah, the bladder tank, I'm not sure. The prior discussion was to divide those costs between parks and some of their reserve accounts and order that bladder system. I'm not sure if that's occurred or not, but there is a significant lead time on a surge tank to order that. So.
Okay, so what do you think it'd take to get a surge tank in here?
There's a little bit of engineering work that still has to occur as well to decide where that point of connection is. We haven't tasked Bowen Collins with that. We talked about using our own engineering department to do that. That's work that they feel comfortable doing. So I'm not sure what
It hasn't been raised to me.
Okay, I guess part of my frustration is we made an executive decision to have this solution be coming online right away. It looks to me like we might make it through another season before this solution's in place. There's a significant lead time to getting the bladder tank. That was a given in both of these proposals, wasn't it? Why weren't we doing simultaneous addressing? We know this is going to be a proposal we're going to have, but we know the bladder tank has to be ordered and needs to be engineered. I get, we decided as a council we were going to make a solution, and so far our solution's been ignored by the information we gathered through an engineering study. And it's a little frustrating to know that we had a solution that was supposed to be coming online, but it's not coming online right now.
Sure, and I can't speak for the Parks Department. I do know we had some conversation with them and they were working on some procurement for that and some of the options. I'm not sure, I can't speak to that. So.
I can speak to that, Mayor and Council. John Banks, Parks and Recreation Director. The assumption on the initial solution path was that, and this revised solution path, was that the Parks and Recreation Department and the Golf CIP would fund the pressure tank. We have done some research on that. What Bowen Collins initially thought that it would have to be a vault type of system, but what we've heard since then is it can sit above ground, which we think will be a substantial cost saving. So Alan Green, prior to his retirement, did quite a bit of research on that. I guess the holdup for us is that we need to have kind of a clearly defined, agreed upon, council-blessed solution path prior to purchasing and having that engineered for the system. So we're ready and waiting.
So let's do that. Above ground or below ground? What does it matter?
I think that the research that the Parks has done is likely valid on that it can function as an above ground and be adequate for this situation.
Okay.
The question of, I believe what John's alluding to is the question of whether the primary supply point is the Cree well or the Lundberg Lane connection makes a difference on where we would want to place that surge tank.
And how it's engineered ultimately.
Okay, so if we're going with your recommendation of one point of source of water, then you know where that bladder tank goes, I'm assuming, where that location would be.
I haven't done any analysis of it, but I think we could figure that out.
As Parks?
Yeah, we were thinking the most appropriate place would be kind of at the heading down from the number 1 tee, adjacent to your guys' pump house, I guess. Kind of there in that area. We were hoping to kind of tag team onto that structure and maybe just do some 3-sided fencing with a concrete slab to keep the cost down, much more than an underground vault for the first solution. Hopefully, maybe that's still a viable spot. If not, we'll find somewhere else at the Water Department's recommendation if we ultimately go with this solution.
So how long does it take to get a bladder tank in?
Our recent experience on that with the Johnny Creek Booster Station, the tank itself had about 90 days of lead time from order to delivery.
So we can't have this up and running in the middle of June?
I'm not positive that would be the same for this tank, but it was likely more than 30 days, I would say.
Yeah, we weren't here in the 90-day lead time. I think the Johnny Creek is substantially larger. This was a 250-gallon tank, which kind of a glorified, really large water heater type size. So we're confident that the lead time is going to be quite a bit less. And once we get a solution, we can make headway on that ASAP.
So I'm interested in helping with this $15,000 change. If we're going to do this, I'm interested in helping with that change for their computer system and stuff like that. And it's really up to the council, but my proposal would be that if we're following this recommendation, that the water department take care of that stuff, Parks Department takes care of the computer, the golf, what did you say, it's golf's, what is it?
The pressure tank?
No, the money you were going to pull for the golf CIP, is that what it was? So
yeah, we were going to pay for the pressure tank. There were no associated reprogramming costs in the initial solution path. It was mentioned by Bowen Collins, but it wasn't considered a viable solution because they have a short water window, and they need to maintain the flexibility. So although it was mentioned as certainly a contributing factor, it wasn't feasible to change. So we were not planning on any reprogramming costs, kind of with the assumption of a continued two-source program.
So where we're going to the one source program, though, we're going to have a cost, right, in the programming.
Some kind of cost, I would imagine. We haven't really looked into that.
So my recommendation is Parks takes care of that, or your golf CIP take care of that, and water take care of the water stuff, the bladder tank, everything else you had up there, whatever it was, the PRVs and stuff like that.
I think we were sharing the bladder was
going to be there before, but that was because if I remember right, because water was going to have a $130,000 impact, and that was to help solve that.
Okay.
I mean, I'm just going to throw that out there for the council.
So you're just saying divert it from
the one to the other is what I'm saying.
What about guaranteeing Gerald a couple $1,000 for repairs until we get this solution in place?
Well, I think it's our system, quite frankly.
I do too.
I think it's the golf course is the city's golf courses. And I think if the golf courses are ours, then it's probably our water system that supplies the water there. And it would make sense that we would have some kind of share, if nothing else, in making sure those fixes were fixed. But I don't know, Council, what do you think? I don't want to just say, yeah, we're just going to go ahead and fix it all and do that, and then we have, $200,000 worth of, yeah.
And we know that that's needed.
I'm sorry, can I make a suggestion?
Yeah.
I haven't really talked with Gerald and Brian about kind of quantifying this figure of kind of financial pain, I guess, from all of the breaks. I'd like a chance to kind of talk with them and vet that a little bit, and maybe come back to the council with if it's appropriate, a recommendation for some kind of a cost share or something at a later date. Because I heard 65,000 over, so I haven't gotten into the nuts and bolts of that. I feel comfortable if I could.
So I would ask the council if we go that route to have you just visit with me, and if I'm okay with it, if they're okay with it. As long as it's not some major thing, and obviously we'll keep you informed.
Well, but I think we got to do it in light of day.
Do we need to? Okay.
Because we're undoing the decision we've made.
Sure.
So I think we've got to make a new decision that undoes that decision.
Well, I think if you do this, that's making that new decision, and what we're talking about is just that extra.
But we're not.
Maybe a couple $1,000s, it sounds like, to fix the brakes and stuff until we get this done.
Yeah, well, I would say that we need to have, if we're going to go with this proposal, that it needs to come to us, because it's undoing the council decision, and we need to authorize a new way of doing this, and that we can work out some of the shared cost stuff as part of that proposal that comes to us. And I would say it sounds fair that if we're saving the water department to, put some skin in the game, so to speak, on the design, that they do the bladder tank now because it's a huge cost savings from the water department for this other design.
So really what you're saying is June, the first meeting in June, come back with this proposal so we can approve it or not. And by that time, you should have the numbers and what it might be for the fixing, the extra fixes if we need to, and the council can make a decision.
Yeah,
I'm good
we
with
need
that. I think
we
that's
need it
fair.
all quantified, comes back to us as a proposal, and we vote on it.
Okay.
Let's get parts ordered.
Yeah, well, yeah, we've already, let's get things ordered because we already know that one decision's been made, and it's the $200,000 or $165,000 decision. It's been made, and so let's get parts ordered so that we can move forward with the bladder tank and stuff like that, and then bring this to us in June, the first meeting, unless you're fast enough to get it for you need the stuff today, right? For next week's agenda, Ruth?
Well, are you talking June?
No, I'm talking about
May.
June is as early as we can really get this put in front of us, isn't it?
Correct.
Okay. So the first meeting in June, so we have numbers so we can consider that. But yes, I agree, we should get the tank ordered. We already know we're going to need the tank in either.
It's authorized and it's part of both solutions.
Mayor, can I take it? I want to summarize what I think I'm hearing. So we're shifting the responsibility, or council's direction is to shift the responsibility for the pressure tank to the water department, maybe to realize some efficiencies with engineering or placement and getting it ordered ASAP. That's really more in their wheelhouse. And then the parks golf CIP would bear the burden of any computer reprogramming or purchasing or whatnot.
That would be my suggestion. I haven't seen anybody up here jump out of their chair screaming no yet.
Did I hear somebody say it was going to have to be reprogrammed either way? Was that for something
implied
else?
within the report. That
Okay,
they're
so
may,
changing to this is
again
not-
with the mays and coulds. I apologize for.
Okay.
But the mays and coulds in there, it says it may require some reprogramming under either of those solutions.
Councilman Adamson, can I read from the technical memorandum? Would reprogramming the valves to close more slowly fix it? Yes, but this is not considered a viable option. The golf course irrigation system must be both automated and flexible to accommodate the daily changing irrigation needs. The fine balance required to prevent surge is not likely to be achieved, allowing the irrigation system to perform its purpose. In other words, yeah, it would help, but they can't do it because they have a short water window. They'd be watering the golf course at starting at 6 p.m. and ending at 11 the next day. It kind of cuts into the golf time. So sure, it was mentioned, but it's not a viable option. So I would disagree with that comment.
Okay.
Are we okay with going in that direction, council?
Yes.
Then bring it before us in the 1st of June? If the two of you will work together in that, get a cost of what it's going to take to reprogram whatever we've got to reprogram, get an idea of what the anticipated cost might be if the council so desires to help pay for some of those costs, and then the tank and all of that other stuff so that we're following this thing so we can make that decision in June. All right, super. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming. I know that you guys were busy today, and I appreciate you taking some time with us, so thanks.
Thanks.
I appreciate the vocabulary, like hydraulic models. That's awesome.
Okay.
It's a fluid illustration.
We're gonna move on to agenda item number 3, which is Animal Shelter Advisory Board update. Representatives from the Animal Shelter Advisory Board will discuss the board's goals and projects as well as council's policies and expectations. Now, I understand you need to take a minute to load that up, right?
Yes.
Okay, so we're gonna take a break for a few minutes and then we'll be right back.
Okay.
You got 1 second.
Get a free lunch out of Gerald.
Thank you very much for joining us after the break. We appreciate your attendance. We'll go ahead and continue on with it. Agenda item number 3 is the Animal Shelter Advisory Board updates.
Good morning, Mayor, Council.
Thank you for having us today. I want to introduce Dan Linehan. He has been appointed our new advisory board chairperson.
Good morning. Thank you for having us.
And we do have some other board members that have joined us as well. So I'll just go ahead and get started with the
Could we have them
presentation.
introduced, please? Would you do that?
Absolutely. So this is Jane Gittinger. She runs One Dog Makes a Difference, which is a training organization. Brandy is Jacoby. I'm sorry. Brandy is the office manager for Community Animal Hospital. Mary Johnson, she owns the McDonald's in town. Sharon Sieber, and she is a professor or retired professor at ISU. Kathy Reynolds, who is happily retired from the health department.
Yes.
So those are the board members that we have here with us today.
Thank you.
Thanks.
So we just wanted to start this by, we're going to tell you what our goals are and what the goals that we have achieved throughout the last year. So the first one, and before we do anything else, besides thanking you guys for having us today, we want to thank Councilman Bray. He is our council liaison, and he has been very helpful. He's come to the meetings, he's been very engaged in what we're doing, given us some wonderful ideas, and really helped and supported us. So thank you, Mr. Bray, we appreciate it. So the goals for the advisory board. The advisory board is currently looking into helping educate the public about service animals and how they differ from emotional support animals. A big part of this is landlords. Getting landlords, we would like to get landlords involved so they're aware of their rights when renting to someone with a service animal, and knowing what the difference is between a service animal and an emotional support animal, and what rights they have as far as the questions that they can ask them, the size, the breed. There's various things that they just don't understand. So with the help of Jane Gittinger, who has done some training and helping with training of service animals, she's been able to give us some more insight on this subject. So we're hoping to be able to get that out there. There's just so many people, we feel emotional animals are very important. Somebody with PTSD could definitely use a support animal, so we're not downgrading the use of them. But there's a lot of people that take advantage of this as well. They just want to be able to have a dog in their apartment or a cat in their apartment, and so they get their doctor to write them a prescription. So we just would like to help the public to understand what they really mean, what the difference is, and what they can do to protect themselves.
There is a landlord association. Have
Right,
you met with them?
and Councilman Bray had brought that up, so we were going to get together and meet with them, see if that's something that they would be interested in, and then talk to them about that.
Good.
The other thing that we'd like to do is increase the number of nonprofit rescues and shelters we work with throughout the Western United States. We recently joined forces with Best Friends, which is a national group. Their goal is to help as many animals as they can find homes, find forever homes, and or get back to their owners. So they also do a trap and release program, which we're looking into. It is something that's very controversial in certain areas. Idaho Falls has recently adopted this program, and they seem to love it. So we're working with them, we're talking more with them. I'm going to have a couple of the representatives come up and talk to the board as a whole and explain how the program works, and then we'll decide if it's something that we think will work in our town.
Let me ask you a question.
Yes.
There's quite a problem with yellow-bellied marmots or something. Is that the type of animal that would be trapped, or just skunks?
Neither.
Neither. Okay.
We
Feral
only
cats.
deal with domesticated animals.
Okay.
So the trap and release program, basically what that is we trap feral cats, we get them spayed or neutered, and we release them back to the area they came from.
Really?
Yes. And that's where the controversy comes in. A lot of people just don't want cats in their yard, which I completely understand. Our biggest concern is to stop the breeding. But that's why we would really have to meet with the public. It was something that we would bring to the council before we decided whether or not to proceed with it, and the advisory board and the people from Best Friends, because of that controversy. Well, you may fix them, but I still don't want them in my yard. So that it's definitely something that we need to look a lot more into. It's brand new to us. But as far as marmots, and I just got a call from the Journal yesterday to do an article. Marmots, skunks, raccoons, they're not domesticated animals, so those are a fish and game issue. But with marmots, rock chucks, whatever you want to call them, you really just need to call a pest control company. If you want to eliminate them out of your yard, a pest control company is your best option. Unfortunately, people don't like that answer because that's going to cost them money. But if we tried to trap and get rid of every marmot in this town, we'd be working 24/7, 365.
Some in the community would like you to do that.
Yes, and I understand. I do understand that. I definitely do understand that, but our focus has to be on domesticated animals.
Well, just a little add-on. When we were looking at the levee, we really had to look at the marmot issue because they compromised the levee by their tunneling in the rocks and stuff. And so there are downsides to being animal friendly all the time.
Oh, I agree. I agree. I won't give my personal views of dealing with marmots, but I agree with you.
No, I just think that gives us a little context.
Yeah.
Because we could have flooded a bunch of homes if that compromise.
Goals achieved. One of the main goals that the shelter had over the last 8 months has been to convert 2 of our rooms into a surgical suite and preparation room. Within the last week or so, we have been able to start doing minor surgeries, such as spay neuters. We are also waiting for 2 ceiling lights. Once those come in, we'll be able to do more intense surgeries and procedures. We had a kitten that came into the shelter 3 days ago. Came into the shelter and unfortunately it was severely wounded. The bone was actually sticking out of this kitty's leg. But because we have that surgery suite, our vet was able to take that kitten and amputate the leg. And so within hours, the cat is done suffering, it's healing, it's happy, it's eating, it's drinking, and it will get a great home. People love tripod kitties. So,
might not jump as high.
I'm sorry?
Might not jump as high.
That's true. It might not jump as high, which might be good. Won't jump the fence. So we are just so excited about being able to have this. One of the organizations we've been working with is PAWS. And if any of you know Jane Jolene Anderson, she came yesterday. I gave her a tour of what we've achieved and she started to cry. And we had a moment, and it is something that the shelter has wanted to achieve for a really long time. And I thank all of you for your support in helping us to make that happen. Shelter statistics. From January 1st, 2018 to May 4th, 2018, our live release rate is 71%, which is a great number. We have adopted out 219 dogs and 183 cats. We have transferred out 34 dogs and 27 cats. We've returned 142 dogs, 5 puppies, and 20 cats back to their owners. In 2017, we took in a total of 3,615 animals, and our live release rate over the full year was 65%. So those numbers are definitely an improvement from the last few years. With working with different organizations, being able to transfer to other shelters and other rescue groups, and being able to vaccinate upon intake has helped with the illness. Transferring has helped with being able to have more room for the animals that come in, and just working with other groups. So we're really happy with these numbers and hoping that they'll just keep going up.
Where do most of the transfers go?
We work with Snake River, Idaho Humane Society, we work with PAWS, we work with the Bandit Humane Society. We always have a couple cats at PetSmart, and they go quick. The Humane Society takes cats from us to put at PetSmart as well, because as soon as they get there, within a week or two, they're adopted. So we're constantly getting cats through there. But those are the most places. We do take some things to Utah, and we have a couple different organizations for certain breeds. We have Big Paws, Big Hearts in Colorado, and they take Newfoundlands, Great Pyrenees. So for specific breeds, we have different places that we go, but for your everyday mixed breed, those are the organizations that we use.
The returned animals, are those ones that were picked up by our officers and brought to the shelter?
Yeah, either an officer has picked them up and brought them in, or a citizen has found the animal and brought it in.
Okay.
And having a license on your pet and or a microchip is the #1 way that those animals have gotten picked up. So many people just don't think to come and look.
So the live release of feral cats. Feral cats are probably one of the great casualties of going to the animal shelter.
Yes.
So one of the positive things to be considering is the euthanasia rate on feral cats would go down. They get to live out their life and hopefully not incur as much wrath by people because they're not breeding anymore.
Yes, that's definitely the goal. And Best Friends does have volunteers that actually manage these colonies. So they try to keep them in one specific area, and then a volunteer will go down and check these animals to make sure that the colony doesn't increase. Once you get every animal in the colony spayed or neutered, then that colony it will stay the same size. They generally won't let new animals in once they're fixed.
So if you had 65% live release, what percentage of the remaining 35% that didn't leave were feral cats, would you estimate?
Oh, I would say that was at least 20, 25. They're definitely the #1 reason. The #1 animal to be euthanized at the shelter is feral cats. The other one that's really close, at least this time of year, is we get so many litters of kittens, and they're just too young. Either they were abandoned, the mom was run over, whatever the case may be. They're just too young to survive on their own, or we don't have the staff to be able to feed them every 2 hours, and sometimes we have to tube feed them, and they don't make it. So that's unfortunately one of the other big casualties that we have this time of year, and that increases in the summer.
Any other questions?
If I may just point out that trap, neuter, and release program, that is something to consider. My past employment had me over in Wyoming, and they use that, very popular in ranching communities, and it does work. It reduces the number of mostly feral cats. And one particular incident we read about over there with the feral cat was the literal cat scratch fever, the disease that humans can contact from being scratched or bitten by a feral cat. So it's something that we need to take further. And then we mentioned PetSmart and the new surgical suit. I just wanted to point out remind the council, the grant money we received, what was it, $50,000?
We received $50,000 from PetSmart charities, and we received another $40,000 from private donations.
And the fact that PetSmart is allowing us to take shelter animals over to their facility and put them up for adoption is fabulous. So just wanted to point that out.
Yes.
Thank you.
Corey, the manager at PetSmart, has been wonderful. She's a great person.
Super.
Any other questions?
Council? Great, thank you. Thank you very much for doing what you do. Appreciate that.
We got off easy.
Okay, we'll move on to agenda item number 4 is the CDBG Advisory Committee update. Representatives from the Community Development Block Grant CDBG Committee will discuss the committee's goals and projects as well as council's policies and expectations.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I'm Stephanie Heaton. I work at Health West as their Director of Grants and Special Programs, and I'm the Chairperson of the Community Development Block Grant Advisory Board, and I'd like to thank you for inviting me here today.
Adam Ling, Cdbg Program Manager.
So for the 2017 year, I guess I should say a little bit about our committee first. There's 7 members on our committee. 4 of those members are from specific low to moderate income neighborhoods in our town, so that we get good representation on the board from the whole city as a whole. So we meet monthly, and we provide input and recommendations on community needs that can be met using community development block grant funding. The committee is responsible for reviewing HUD required documents such as action plans, the consolidated plan, and end-of-year performance reports, and also provides oversight of the city's funding award system and fair housing activities. For 2017, our major accomplishments were the completion of the, Program year 2018 action plan, and the program year 2016 CAPER. There was a completion of 5 subrecipient projects, a completion of 28 home rehab projects between the city and NeighborWorks, a completion of 3 individual sidewalk programs, and 1 neighborhood project on Federal Road. In 2018, the committee will oversee the development of the program year 2019 action plan, completion of 4 subrecipient projects, the continued success of the home rehab and sidewalk program. We're also part of the fair housing activities, and I would personally like to thank Mayor Blatt and the council members for supporting fair housing in our community. It really makes a difference for people, and it really makes Pocatello a great place to live. Part of our commitment to fair housing, to affirmatively further fair housing, say that 3 times, that's hard, is to provide fair housing brochures to the public, publish articles in the mayor's newsletter, and host a fair housing trainings and workshops. The Cdbg staff provides the community with monthly fair housing updates that include discrimination testing, fair housing lawsuits locally and across the United States, fair housing issues that occur in Pocatello, guidance for persons affected by housing discrimination, and how other communities promote fair housing. Program year 2017 was an above average year for most of the program accomplishments, specifically in housing rehab and new residential units completed and occupied by low to moderate income families. The 5-year totals generally meet or exceed our consolidated plan goals. So if you can see there, in the last 5 years, there's been 128 home housing rehabs, 15 residential lot acquisitions, 5 demolitions and clearances, 18 new residential units, and 28 sidewalk projects. And finally, the accomplishments of the program are evident throughout the community. As you travel around, there are 3 new beautiful homes located off Jason Avenue, new sidewalks in several low to moderate income areas, several dilapidated homes have been demolished and ready for new home construction, and many existing homes have been rehabbed for low to moderate income homeowners. So there's a picture of an old sidewalk and how it looks now. So that's our plans for this year and last year. Do you have any questions?
Questions, council?
I'm wondering about the sidewalk program. Is that complaint-driven, or who identifies those?
It's a mixture, so it can be complaint-driven, something that's referred to us from code enforcement. If there's an issue identified, and that if the homeowner can show a financial constraint to taking care of those, it can be referred to us, and we can possibly help out. And then it's other engineering can just bring something to us that they've identified, or just anybody can bring up an area and we can take a look at it and study an issue.
Do we still have areas where the sidewalk and the curbing is not ADA accessible for people getting up onto the sidewalk from the street?
Sure,
crossing?
yeah, that exists, yeah, in a lot of places in the community, and if it's part of something that we're working on, we address that.
I know there's been a lot done over by the university, but are there any other neighborhoods that should be targeted?
It's hard to pinpoint one area that's worse than the others. I mean, there's just bad sidewalks everywhere. Yeah. So we just really try to focus areas on places that are traveled by senior citizens, and then around schools and where there's high traffic areas to really focus on.
Councilman Bray?
I think Jim's talking from our experience of being in a parade. We noticed at Center Street, there were some sections of Center Street, which is one of our major arteries. There really needs to be some curb and gutter and some sidewalk done over there. And I really, if I were to try to make suggestions to target areas, those areas where people drive through and it makes both an aesthetic and a practical improvement, I would really focus on that, particularly Center and Clark Streets, which bring people into town.
Okay.
Is the need, like, what am I trying to ask here? Does requests for help far exceed the amount of money that you have to give, or are you able to help most people that come?
We're able to help most people that come. There's an application process, and that can be burdensome to some people, so they don't follow through. So they just don't want to go through our process. But we don't have to say no to anybody that qualifies for the most part.
Any other questions?
Oh, how fast do the houses turn over that are built? Sometimes they're slow.
For the new construction?
Yeah, are they moving now?
It's taking 8 to 12 months from start of construction.
Okay.
From when we actually, if it's an info lot that we're actually purchasing, it's taking 2 years by the time we kind of get to it.
Okay.
But construction starting is 8 to 12 months.
Because we know there's a big backlog of affordable housing, and this is one program that helps address that need.
Yes. Yeah.
I think in the past, the homes, they were kind of on maybe in a year or so ago, maybe 2 years, they didn't move as quickly as everyone wanted, but lately they've been moving very, very quickly.
Okay. Right.
Okay, super. Any other questions? Thank you very much for what you do. Appreciate it. We'll move on to agenda item number 5 is proposed CDBG program changes. Community Development Block Grant CDBG. Staff will be present to review proposed changes to the CDBG program. Looks like you're back up here, huh?
I'm back up here. So now you know what CDBG did the last year. I'm here to talk about some proposed changes to the program. And the changes that we're proposing are not necessarily policies or procedures, official policies that, that even need to be voted on or anything, or affected by HUD policies or regulations. They're more just kind of locally our process of planning for the program, and just also our scope of services. So just a little refresher on how the program is supposed to work, and then how it's the issues that we're having is that our program year runs from April 1st to March 31st of any year. The application funding cycle, so this is specifically for subrecipients, occurs generally September through November. So possible subrecipients come in and they make application for a specific project. Staff vets that project and says, yeah, we can do that with HUD funds. The project is brought to the advisory committee who gets a presentation to them, and then they make a recommendation for funding approvals, and then the overall spending plan comes to you all in usually mid-December, and you approve that spending plan. It gets finalized and sent to HUD. HUD approves it, and then come April 1st, we go to work on that spending plan. So that's the way that it's supposed to work. So the problem is essentially delays in funding availability, and our funds are all federal, and so of course it's tied to the federal budget. And there hasn't been an on-time budget in something like 15 years, so the money's always late, but the past few years it's becoming later and later. And actually so in program year 2017, we're supposed to have our money April 1st, the money came in around November 15th. And
which is really the next budget year.
Yeah, yes, it is. Yeah, I mean, so even it had issues with finance and all those.
Do you have to have that spent by a certain time as well, or?
So we are expected to operate our program and execute our action plan within the program year. Yes, HUD expects us to still spend on time. Now, of course, we end up not, and we just have to tell them why and keep going, right? We're not the only city or grantee having this problem. It's expected, but yes, we are supposed to stay on time. So one of the issues is that in the process we have is, so subrecipient projects are tied to a specific program year. We and you approve their projects and their activities specifically from program year 2017 funding. So we can't start at all on that project until funds are available. And so for last year, funds became available November 15th. A lot of these projects had concrete, sidewalks, roofing, and we were just not able to do them because they're weather dependent. And they got delayed until the spring, and now we're working on those. So we're always behind on those projects, and this year's severely behind. So one of the issues that it causes is subrecipients have trouble planning for their projects. So they have, their needs are usually fairly immediate, and this is something they need to have done in the next 6 months, or when they apply to this, say we're going to finish this project in the next 12 months. And we end up delaying them for 18 months. And a lot of them end up just saying, we can't wait, and we're gonna have to find another way to do this, or not do it at all, and then they still have an even bigger problem. And so a lot of subrecipients have just stopped applying because they know they can't count on, and we can't give them any sort of, we know we're gonna have our funding at this point, and so they've stopped applying.
Can you give me an example of who our sub-recipients would be?
Typically, every year it's Aid for Friends, Family Services Alliance, Bannock Youth Foundation has typically been awarded, but they're one of the ones who've kind of given up. New Day Products and Resources for the last couple of years.
Okay, good, thank you.
So last year was really late, and so this is a continued problem. Program year 2018, we have received our allocation. We got it last week, but what that means is, based on past years, the funding should be available something like October of this year. And again, we have a very large roofing project, again, sidewalk projects, and to say, okay, we can't even start doing these things until October. Contractors are busy. We're just not going to be on their schedule. So we're already, feels like we're going to be behind on 18's funding.
And then when the community gets more engaged with jobs and projects like we are lately, then it can set them back even further.
Right.
Because they don't get to be at the head of the list as a fill-in. They're an add-on.
Right. Yes. And the one we have a large roofing project for New Day Products and Resources. Their roof is leaking really, really, really bad, and we've funded them, but it's not something we can start until October. And I can, if anybody's ever tried to bid roofing out in the last couple of years, they're 6 and 12 months out, these contractors. So they're just not going to get to us if we don't start bidding it right now. So the proposal that I'm making for changes into the process is, instead of tying subrecipient projects to specific years, and so we can't do their project until that year's funding comes in, what I want to create is, in our action plan and our spending plan, is you would come up with an allocation to fund public facility improvement projects and public service projects. You'd allocate them to the action plan with the projects to be identified later. And this is really similar to how we do home rehab. So we fund the home rehab project, say $100,000 a year. We don't know which homeowners we're going to be serving over the next year. They apply to us throughout the year, and then we award them for their specific project. So the proposal is to do it similar to that. You would allocate maybe $50,000 to public facility improvement projects. When we know a funding level, we can make notice to subrecipients that you can come apply to us. We will know how much money we're going to have, because usually when they're applying, we don't even know how much money we're going to have. We're just guessing. And so we'll know the actual money, and we can make awards throughout the year on an ongoing process. So that process would work as, we know our funding level. We'll send out a notice to subrecipients that they come apply. They would submit written applications to us, as they always do. They would come to the advisory committee, make a presentation, and then the advisory committee could award for projects from there. Are there any questions on that?
Nope.
Okay.
So if they turned their funds over fast and released them October 1st, and also we're releasing them from the previous year, we could get a lot done that year.
Absolutely. If I got my money on time, I could get so much done, yeah.
Well, I know that the FEMA funds are about the same boat now, the emergency allocation. It's called emergency allocation, and they don't release them
18 months late.
Yeah.
If this is something that sounds okay to you, what I would like to do, instead of waiting for 2018, so right, you've already approved 2018 projects, and those are on hold until October, and so we could keep going that way, or and wait till 2019 for this new process. Or what I'd like to propose is that the 2018 projects that you approved, we go ahead and do with 2017 funds. And that would take just an amendment to our action plan. The funding is available in 2017 because we got a lot of more program income than we had anticipated, so the funding is there for that.
Have we done the 2017 projects?
The 2017 projects are, most of them are done. There's two that were just because they were weather dependent are being done now. So I'm talking about the 2018 projects that you approved. Use 2017 funds to do that.
Is there some money available to do that?
That's my question. Is there money available in 2017 for 2018?
Yes. So there's some excess funds in 2017 because we receive program income throughout the year, and we usually anticipate 20 to 25,000, and we received something like 75,000 in program income this year.
Let's do it.
And so there's those are the extra funds that we have.
So are you adjusting 2017 project or program year 2017 to include the 18 stuff?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, we would amend the 2017 action plan to fund the projects that you approved for 2018, and then the 2018 spending plan would be amended to say, we're going to put $50,000 towards public facility improvement projects that we'll award at a later date.
I think it's a good idea.
Sorry. Where does the New Day Products roof fit in?
It is...
Is that an 18 or a 19?
Both. So we partially funded it in 17, and then the rest of it in 18. So it is on hold because we're waiting for those 18 funds.
As long as that does not jeopardize future funding, I'm perfectly in favor of it.
It should improve things because we're going to be able to stay on time.
Good.
Okay.
Is this then a one-time change, just because of those excess funds?
To fund these projects, yes. The process that the overall process, I would like to do that somewhat permanent, try it for a couple program years to see how it goes. But yeah, the changing of the funds, using 17 for 18 projects, yeah. Just
Well, whether we can do it in the future is going to depend if there's excess funds.
Yes, yeah.
So it will be ongoing. It's not a single action. It will be ongoing. It will just be, next year we'll have to discuss it and find out what we've got and then go forward. So it's a good idea. I think you move forward with it.
Okay. The other change that we're looking for is more of an expansion of our scope of services in the rehab program.
So they didn't find any lead in the New Day roof, huh?
Well, it's actually an exempt activity from lead-based paint, but no.
Would have got the funds fast.
Yeah. So this is kind of in conjunction with the lead grant that we received and our Lead Safe and Healthy Homes program. And overall, with HUD is going toward a bigger push for bringing together, the ideas of housing and healthcare, and how, a family's home affects their overall health. And, with the idea of course, lead-based paint is one of their major concerns, and especially, it's been in the news because of Flint and the lead in the water and the things that happen on there. But the, lead-based paint hazards is a huge, it's an epidemic in this country. With 24 million homes in the country have lead-based paint, and the healthcare costs are just huge, just specifically to lead. But not to put lead aside, HUD really wants to start focusing more on the overall healthy home aspects and how it affects families, and they're pushing us to focus on that more. And with June being Healthy Home Month, we're just trying to do our part to help educate the community on keeping their homes healthy. So what do we want to do? We would like to put greater emphasis on creating healthy homes in Pocatello by using the Cdbg renewal program in conjunction with the Lead Safe and Healthy Home program. So the grant funds for Lead Safe and Healthy Homes really only allows us to deal with lead, but we would like to take the opportunity when we're going into people's homes and looking at the lead to also talk to them about the health aspects of the rest of the home. We provide education and outreach to them when we're actually in there. HUD has developed in conjunction with other people. There's 29 aspects to a home that we would look at, and it's you can't really read that. Sorry. It's mold issues, asbestos, volatile organic compounds or VOCs. Things that are affecting kids. There's a asthma epidemic in this country with children, and these are specifically caused by their homes or exacerbated by the conditions that they're living in. So there's actually a home assessment checklist that we can use at the given us. We go in there and just 30 minutes, go through the home, check off what's kind of wrong and what's right, and actually give them kind of a score. We like to offer to this people at no cost, and then based on the assessment, provide recommendations for repairs, and not offering them the actual funds, but say here's some other things that you might want to look at in your home that could be affecting your health, and if they do need help with some financing, we can help them locate those sources. We do have Cdbg, a renewal loan. We have a small grant for the small repairs, Lead Safe and Healthy Homes if it's related to lead, and then there's also NeighborWorks Pocatello.
Is there any obligation or enforcement associated with the inspection?
No. So it's just kind of something that we're offering to them, to just for education purposes.
Yeah. We see many national statistics, but has there been testing locally to determine how this is impacting our children?
That's one of I think one of the reasons we really got, part of the reasons we got the Lead Safe funding is that there are no numbers locally for lead. Working with the healthcare professionals and the clinics and the people that do this testing, nobody's compiling this information. And with the amount of homes that we have that are pre-78 and most likely have lead paint, there are kids in the community that have elevated blood levels. I mean, it's just, they have to be there because, if you compare us to other communities that are tracking that information, they're there.
Our housing stock is really old.
It's one of the oldest housing stocks in Idaho, and so it's something we're able to speak of. So we can't point to any data because nobody's tracking it, and that's something that we're going to be doing. We're going to be tracking the testing of the children and be able to provide that to HUD and to locally.
Do we have lead pipes that the city is responsible for?
We do have lead pipes. I don't know a lot.
No, we don't.
The other night at the water panel discussion, Harold Hargrave said that they have identified almost all of the lead pipes and gotten rid of them and replaced them. So they said there should be very few left in the city's system.
Yeah, so it'd just be from the city system into the house.
Right.
Where they're lead.
Those that are still remaining due to our extremely hard water have been coated with minerals that eliminate the lead from exposure to raw water.
Yeah, he said that was an advantage to having hard water.
And I get that question a lot because the lead in water is what's been in the news and everything. And the lead grant is specific to lead-based paint and the hazards with that. But what we can tell people is that with lead in the water and in the pipes, just by running your water for a few minutes, that gets flushed out because the lead gets in the water when it sits there overnight and absorbs from the pipes. So if you just run your water, you get that water run through. That can eliminate that hazard.
I could ask interesting questions, but take, for instance, our drinking fountains. The water sits in there for a long period of time. Now, we don't have lead-based paint in this lead in our pipes in this building, but in many of the older buildings in Old Town, how long do you have to push the button to?
So we actually get training on this as Casey and I are both lead risk assessors, and the training we get is when we actually test. The first test we do is in the morning before any water has been run, and then we're going to run it for several minutes to get everything flushed out, so we can show that it's caused by this. So several minutes.
Thank you.
To quench that thirst, I have to wait.
Okay, any other questions?
I had a question. When you say doing the assessment and you were talking a lot about we, who is we? Is that you or is that?
Yes, Cdbg staff.
Okay.
Yeah, that's so me or the rehab specialist, whoever's available.
Okay.
Okay, super. No other questions? Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, then we'll move on to agenda item number 6, a READY presentation. Representatives from Regional Economic Development Eastern Idaho, READY, will be present to discuss their organization.
Felt right on the face and been sitting there too. Well, good morning, because it's still good morning. To the mayor and council, I'm Jan Rogers, CEO of the Regional Economic Development Organization, READY. And with me today is Dana Kirkham, who is the Director of Science, Technology, and Research for the organization. So we're going to take you through a real quick, brief update of things that have been happening over the last several months. But before we get started, I just wanted to hit on 2 quick things. A statement of purpose for this organization is really to promote Eastern Idaho, the region of Eastern Idaho, and to help bring business, government, and community leadership together for the purpose of strengthening the Eastern Idaho economy. And those are the real two main focuses that we have on this organization. So we're going to break it up in a couple. We'll start with marketing. And in your packets, I put some information, just basic information on how many issues, how many news articles that we've received over the year, and so forth and so on, just to give you some basic information. And some marketing materials, which is our infographic that talks about the region. But probably should go back. On the projects, what you see here on the project update are the current active projects. We work with other projects, but they're not active at this moment, so we're really only sharing with you the projects that are active. We're working on a project in Clark County, possible 20 jobs, which is a big deal for those guys. We hope to be able to make that announcement later this summer. Project Cross, we've just started discussions with them the week of April 2nd. Riverwalk is going to make an announcement in June, and that's in Bingham County. River Dance, which is more of a regional project, is moving forward. We've been doing some things, working with them this week on that. Oh Faithful, AKA Cowboy, was a project that we brought to you guys several months ago, and we've actually worked through that project pretty well. It's not off the table, it's just on hold for the moment, right after the first of the year. But I really believe, and I think you probably do, Mayor, too, that project eventually will come to fruition.
Well, that was the one that came, wanted to locate it at an airport, couldn't, left, Reddy dug it back up, brought it back, wanted to go to the airport again, still couldn't because of FAA rules, regulations, who just, by the way, last week, Congress got passed, that we can move forward now. Of course, we're going through the Senate, and we'll see what kind of changes to make there, but so it is looking like it's moving painfully slowly.
Yeah, that project is definitely, absolutely focused on that site. And so I think if we can get past this one issue, then that project is going to move forward, and it's a fantastic expansion in the region. E-Cobalt, which is the refinery and opening up the mine in Salmon, I was just speaking to them yesterday because we had submitted that project to Trade and Industry Development, and we were awarded one of 15 projects in the United States. This E-Cobalt project was awarded, received a CC award. A great project. I was talking to their investor relations person. She said, she'd just been up to the Salmon mine, and she said it was emotionally overwhelming to see the opportunities that was going to open up for folks living up in the Salmon area. And of course, we know it's going to be positive for our region down here in the Blackfoot area. But it was really nice to be recognized, one of 15 projects in the United States, to have it happen for Eastern Idaho. Sakai Casting, we met with 15 companies. In here you'll see sort of a report on our trip to Japan, where Sakai Casting, who we recruited in April of 2017, they're now doing an iGEM project. They hosted us in Japan for 3 days and 2 nights. And I swear they rolled out the red carpet. It was so red that even if the governor was with us, it wouldn't have been any redder. They really opened the doors. They introduced us to 15 other companies. We really went over there to say, hey, let us be the front door to the U.S. market for your company, or and we didn't expect to see a very fast return on that. It was really more of a, introduction to the government. We met with mayors, we met with the vice governor, chamber presidents, and these 15 companies. Well, as it turns out, it appears that several of those companies that we met with are going to be making a trip to Eastern Idaho in July of this year. I have a meeting this afternoon, and then one on the 21st, with the CEO of Sakai to set up that. So here we go. I mean, it's like now we have to roll out the red carpet and make it redder than red. But here's another, this is just, again, an opportunity where you take something and continue to try to build on it and leverage it, and particularly the relationship, and now it's starting to open up more opportunities. The last three are state-led projects. Incognito was, I know Bennett County did apply for that. We weren't a finalist. Inspirit is still pending, but they haven't been getting much response, and that's about 6 to 9 months old. The last new one that came out of state was a milk processing lead, and of course there is no potential for Eastern Idaho on that lead. It stops in the Magic Valley. They're only looking at the Magic Treasure Valley because of the milk source. So those are the current ones we're working on, but I mean the Japanese opportunity and these companies coming over and us being able to introduce them to other small to mid-sized companies here where collaborations can take place. There's a lot of opportunity here, so we're really excited about that. I had no idea it was going to result in that. The team consisted of Bobby Joe, our Director of Commerce, Celia Gould, who is the Director of Ag, Senator Kelly Anthon, Dr. Mark Skinner from the U of I, who is working with Sakai on the iGEM project, and myself. So it was a 5-man team, and they, as I said, they really rolled out the red carpet. So that's kind of what's going on from a project and opportunity update. And again, the marketing, we've exceeded any kind of expectation. We've really gotten a lot of marketing and press for Eastern Idaho in 2017, and that's not going to stop for 2018. We had over 60 articles written about us, about Eastern Idaho, about our communities, about our about our companies. We are in the process, and I'm hoping to go into a soft opening in the next couple of weeks of an expanded website for Ready that is going to include a kind of a one-stop shop for everything, including the recreational and place, sense of place. The problem for us in Eastern Idaho is even if you go to the state website, you have to push 2 buttons to see what's all available in Eastern Idaho, whether it's on the commerce side or the tourism side. And so we're hopeful that we can bring a lot of that to one source through our website. And of course in here you see our infographic. We'll be taking this. We have a small brochure that we put together for Select USA last year. We're going to be doing a similar thing this year, only we're going to focus on our industry sectors. And we have some opportunities. I mean, eCobalt is a Canadian company. The lab has a Canadian connection with their Canadian lab. I mean, with their national lab. The top story, the top announcement coming out of Idaho this year at Select USA is going to be an announcement from the Burley area. But it's part of that announcement is an FDI on FDI, and one of the FDIs is Canada. So we're going to try to leverage the Canadian connection for Eastern Idaho. Okay. So, some of the activities that we've been doing to go out and sell. Site Selector Guild in Cincinnati, we met with a couple of top site consultants, Renee Bucks, who is, his group is focused specifically on science and technology and research. types of projects. He's very interested. I've been talking to him about this for the last couple of years. I had Dana with me this year, so we had deeper conversations. We're hoping to bring him out sometime this year to really get deeper into that sector. Of course, we put on the gubernatorial economic development forum with the governors on both the Republican and Democratic side, and that was really, I think, a good eye-opener. But from our perspective, that question really hadn't been talked about specifically, economic development. I mean, they talk around it, so we wanted the real focus to be there. And so what we did was we brought economic development folks from across the state to come in, so that it was not just an Eastern Idaho discussion, but it was a state discussion, and we did get some pretty good coverage on that. And we had we had over 100 people show up for it. So, and most of them even stayed for the Democrats. So then we had Dana's been up to at ECA meetings and Hill meetings in Washington D.C. several times this year. We are sponsoring the Nuclear Institute Conference, the NIC Conference in Idaho Falls next week. And I don't know if many of you will be able to join us there. And then, of course, Select USA is in June in Washington, D.C. We have a good team going. We're not the lead story this year, because we've just about milked Sakai, casting the Japanese story as much as we can milk it. You have to understand this is an international audience and international media. So without that international connection, even though we have great stories, it's not, the hook isn't there, the interest isn't there. So we need to, we're looking for ways to leverage our story about Eastern Idaho, both in the national and international media. So we think we've got a good shot at that. We are, at least at this point, we're using Violet Communications out of New York, who we've used for the last 3 years. Governor is going to be there. He's like John Wayne. The last time he was there, I've been asked to speak on one of the panels at the Summit Academy. The governor will also be speaking, and we just found out yesterday that Amy Lentz is going to be speaking on how to do business with the lab. So we're going to be well represented in Eastern Idaho at this summit. Over 3,000 people show up. There's all 50 states are there. We're all putting our best foot forward to say, if you want to do business in the U.S., do it in our state. So we think we've got a pretty good plan moving forward for this year. So that just gives you kind of a brief, quick, down and dirty update on the projects, what we're doing on a marketing perspective, what we're doing on with our summits and our out there selling at the like crazy, Eastern Idaho and our corridor. So, Dana, you want to?
So the second part of our objective is to bring communities together, and thank you, Mayor and Council, for some time to address you. And I know it's been a long morning already, so I'll try to move as quickly as possible through this. One of the things that we're finding, we did a survey recently of all of our members, and one of the overreaching themes that came back was that they expect a platform for Eastern Idaho communities and businesses to take an active role in growing the economy. And so what we took from that was the need to establish an organization that's trusted and that can be a voice for the region. And I can see that in my star position with science, technology, and research, particularly when I'm advocating on Capitol Hill, that I have a much stronger influence and I get through a lot more doors because I come as a voice of 14 counties and 300,000 people, a voice that wouldn't necessarily be heard if I was coming as just an individual community of, say, 10,000 or 50,000. And I think it's really important to remember that even as a region of 300,000 people, nationally we're still considered really a rural community. So we have to fight to get the attention that we deserve. One of the things we're focused on, particularly with hiring me, is to focus on the science, technology, and research corridor. And we're just really beginning to figure out exactly what that looks like. READY has commissioned a study to be done to look at all of the tech companies from Pocatello to Rexburg and to actually have an inventory in place and to determine not just who they are, though that's the most important first step, but how many employees do they have, what kinds of jobs, what's the salary range of those jobs, so that we can use this tool to figure out and define exactly who we are, but then to also use it as a tool to build a talent pipeline, to go into the schools and to even to the, not just the high schools, but the junior high schools, and start saying, one of the things that I found as I travel around and meet with a lot of companies is that we'd love to say in Idaho, our kids grow up and go away because there aren't good opportunities here. And that's just simply not true. There are good opportunities here, but a lot of times our students don't know about them. And I think that's one of the things that we've got to rectify and correct. So how are we going to create a platform where we speak as one powerful voice? We've started bringing the communities together at a quarterly roundtable economic developers roundtable. Got that confused. And all of the communities send their planners or their economic development person if they have one, and sit around the table and discuss exactly what's happening in their communities. And this is really important. First, they're building trust and exchanging ideas, which is excellent. But beyond that, they're selling each other. So if something doesn't fit in Rexburg, maybe it fits in Pocatello. And if that planner hears about it, then they say, you know, it's maybe not a great fit here, but we want you in the region. And they understand what's available in the region, and they can sell each other. We're doing a lot of advocacy for issues that are common to all of us. We have begun science, technology, and research by protecting our federal programs. We have 5 federal programs in eastern Idaho, and I have the breakdown of the numbers. There's actually roughly over 1,000 federal employees in the city of Pocatello alone. And that comes from INL, FLOR, NRF. I was actually surprised at how many NRF employees are here. You have 182, which statistically, if you look across the board, that's one of the higher demographics for them. And then, of course, the FBI at 350. But I would just point out, the FBI, I just met with them last week, and it was interesting to hear that they're hoping to hire 400 new people in the next 2 years, but that the minimum requirement for the majority of those jobs will be a bachelor's degree. And so it's really important to connect ISU, to connect BYU Idaho, to connect College of Eastern Idaho, to start building that talent pipeline so that we have that workforce ready for them. We spent a lot of time talking about the SMR and AMWTP, which are issues, of course, that are specific to the national laboratory, but they're also a workforce that impacts the entire region. And so with both the SMR coming and AMWTP being threatened, that's one of the advocacy issues that I've spent a lot of time on.
Could you break those acronyms down?
Oh, I'm sorry. Small modular reactor and the advanced mixed waste treatment plant. So the advanced mixed waste treatment plant could potentially be closed this December, which would be a loss of 400 jobs to our region. So we're talking about extending the mission and working with other delegations to talk about moving waste to Idaho to treat. Anyway, post office is also an issue that Mayor Blatt and I have discussed often. That's a regional issue, another one of the things that we should be taking on and advocating for. We're working on reports that are relative to the region. I talked about the tech inventory. We're also doing a small modular reactor inventory economic impact study. And that, I just got the draft back, in fact, yesterday, and I've just started working through it. But it's going to be really telling for us to understand the small modular reactor supply chain and to understand what the gaps in that supply chain are so that our region can fill those gaps. And that ties in nicely with the Ready for Nuclear event next week. That is really, you have to remember, NIC considers, or the Nuclear Infrastructure Council considers that a region to be from Canada to New Mexico. So when we talk regionally, we're talking even broader than our Eastern Idaho region. So to host that here is really important because those suppliers that are looking to relocate to fill the supply gap are coming to Idaho, and we're hoping to roll out the red carpet and say we're open for business all across the region, and we want you here, and this is why you should be here. Some of the things we've worked on, we hosted a legislative reception in Boise to talk about some of the major issues like the tax credit for small modular reactor, the tuition change for in-state residency, all of those things we advocated for this legislative session in Boise. We spent a lot of time on the Hill. I've talked about AMWTP already. So moving forward, some of the things that we're looking to City of Pocatello for is We still have a board appointment vacant that we're waiting for you to fill, so we would love to have them at the table. Roundtable participation, I've talked to Mayor Blatt about that. I think we're on the right track. We're looking to promote Northgate in some of our publications nationally. We're kind of waiting for the exchange to actually see some dirt moving there, and then it feels a little more feasible. We continue our relationship with Atlantic Development. That's a collaborative effort. We were at Site Selector Guild together, and it's a good team. We promote the region, and they promote Bannock County specifically. And then, of course, you're the only one in the state right now that has an opportunity zone.
In the region.
In eastern Idaho.
Right.
Yeah, not the state. That's right. In eastern Idaho, and that's interesting. An interesting thing to talk about. And so we're watching that closely to see what opportunities.
Yeah, it's actually the rules haven't been written yet, but there have been. We were one of the first 18 states to be approved for opportunity zones, and then within our state, the only opportunity zone in eastern Idaho is Old Town in Pocatello. And so that's going to, we don't know what the overreaching opportunities are going to be because they're still writing the rules on it, but it's going to provide some funding and some and other opportunities.
It's really looking
Who is they?
The federal government.
Yeah, it's looking to revitalize original town sites.
So really what it is, and Jan's right, the rules haven't all been written yet, but the concept is tax credits and things like that. There will be more tax credits available. Somebody will make an investment, they'll be able to recoup that investment through some tax credits. I think there's been 5 through the states that have been awarded, but only 1 here, and I think there's 3 or 4 others in the region that are being considered.
Yeah, there were 12 that were submitted for the state of Idaho.
Yeah.
And again, Idaho was one of the first 18 out of the first wave. We were in the first wave, we were with 17 other states. So, but again, having said all that, that's all great. We're first in queue, but they have yet to fill in the blanks on that. But again, it's an opportunity, not meaning opportunity zone, but it is a real, I think it's going to really it could make a very big difference for Old Town Pocatello.
So when would, you said they're still working out the details, but
yeah, it looks like this fall is when they're hoping to have, this is a new thing, a brand new program.
One thing we have learned is this administration doesn't move very quickly. Not that any government administration does, but particularly this current administration has had some difficulty getting the right people in the right places to make the decisions. We see that particularly on the nuclear energy and the environmental cleanup side as well. We've been waiting for direction for leadership there. They've finally been appointed. So same situation. Any of the federal infrastructure dollars are on hold until the decision makers are in place.
But again, who is they? Is this the
federal government?
Federal government.
But who in the federal?
Treasury.
Yeah.
U.S. Department of Treasury. I'm sorry. I didn't realize you were asking that. Yeah.
So we thank you for your participation in READY, and
Absolutely.
You're a key player, obviously, and an anchor tenant in the region, and so it's really important to have you at the table. And certainly we want to hear from you exactly what your expectations are so that we can meet them.
I have a couple of questions.
Okay, but before we ask the questions, we have Brian back here, our representative. Would you come up to the table and kind of introduce yourself to the community and
come on up.
My name is Brian Allen. I represent the city on the board with them. So,
thank you. Questions?
Yeah, when you're talking about the one voice thing, you said you had surveyed all members, and I was just wondering who in Pocatello did you survey?
So it was an anonymous survey that we sent out to all of our members for them to participate in. We got a response back of 52, which is actually more members than we contributors than we have, and so we know that council members and others participated because we asked it to be pushed out from mayors to council and staff. So.
Okay.
So that got sent through the mayor's office?
I believe so. I didn't actually do the survey, but I think that we're good.
Well, I mean, we sent it out to all of our community partners and all of and others that were involved in the organization, advisory board members, county.
It was put on the website.
It was put on the website. It was put.
But it was
on
emailed
Facebook.
Specifically to the member list.
The member list.
When was that?
January. It's done in January.
And so if it's anonymous, you don't have any idea who from Pocatello responded?
We don't.
So we're not aware that we received that at all?
I don't remember seeing any survey
I know that Bannock
come through.
I know members of Bannock County responded just because in their responses they indicated they were from Bannock County.
But were they from Chubbuck?
I don't know because it was anonymous. And there were just some areas where you could make comments and make suggestions, and there were some that were very specific to Pocatello. So I'm assuming that they have an interest in Pocatello in some capacity. But I mean, we're happy to resend it. We've brought the results back. I don't know, and we've categorized them and analyzed them, and I don't know. I'm sure we're happy to. We would obviously know they were coming from you.
Well, I mean, at this point, I just was wondering because we hadn't ever heard anything on that. And then I had a question on the quarterly roundtable, but then the mayor just told me it sounds like maybe John from Bannock Development had attended that.
He attended the last one, is that right?
Is
he
that?
did not. He did not attend it. But you and I had the conversation because it really wasn't the economic development person that we're necessarily looking for. We're looking more for the city planner because they're getting down into the weeds as far as exactly.
Okay.
And I emailed Mayor Blatt and we had that conversation and said, okay, at the next meeting we'll make sure we have the right person.
Yeah, we met the other day, Dana and I. Did you get any information on a roundtable from before?
The CEDS is the only one that
No, I went directly through the mayor. That's who I emailed for the Economic Developers Roundtable.
Okay.
And made the request.
Okay. So when is that next one?
July, and it'll actually be in Chubbuck. They're hosting.
Okay. Well, we have our planning department here, so.
She's writing it down right now.
Great.
She's writing it down now.
Okay. And then another question I had was before Pocatello had joined READY, there was discussion of the fact that your board meetings are on the day when we normally have our city council meetings, and somebody had promised me that that would be changing so that we could have either our mayor or a city council member participate and attend. So I was just wondering, has there been any more discussion about that, or where are we at on that?
Well, it has been a bit of a moving target, our board meetings, because of, so typically they were the third Thursday of every month. But we have actually in fact this month, it was supposed to be on the 24th, and we have so many people out that day that we're going to have to move it to June 14th.
It's a line commission meeting at the same time, so several of the members can attend.
So we're going to have to move it again. But I will get you, if it hasn't already been sent out to you, right at the moment you were looking at the team, and while sometime in our life we were administrative assistants.
So what time on June 14th?
They typically start at 1:30.
Okay, because that's when we have this meeting, so we will not. So that's what I'm asking, is that somebody had told me that it would be changing to not be on Thursdays anymore.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
They were promised that it would not be on Thursdays anymore, that it would be moved to Wednesday or Friday.
And we can make that move.
Okay.
I mean, happy to do that. We'll just make a note of that.
I mean, it's a little bit harder for us to, I'm glad you guys are here giving us the update right now, but it'd
well,
be
and all
better if we
cities traditionally are meeting on Thursdays, so that's an excellent point.
Yeah, okay.
Yep, happy to do that.
Okay. Other questions?
I have a quick one. So the visit to Japan, you said you met like 15 different businesses and opportunities that way. What were the main industries? Is it technology? Or
They were mostly technology, and they were all over the place. As an example, we had met with a bioplastics company, and ironically, they had already been in contact with Biologic in Blackfoot. And actually, Biologic was meeting with them this month over there, but it looks like he's coming here. So that was one. And we met with another company that does design and machinery for the semiconductors industry. I have to tell you, the way we spent time with them is they presented to us 10 of them presented at one time. They had 5 to 10 minutes to present. They had PowerPoints. They spoke in English, and we had an interpreter. But I've asked for their PowerPoints, and I have notes that I took on every one of them. But it was like drinking out of a fire hydrant. But what I could see and what I hadn't actually considered until I was sitting through those discussions, and we had a reception afterwards where we got into a little bit more detail on some of these things. But what I could see at that point were some companies, some of our small to mid-sized companies here, where there would be a natural collaboration opportunity. There was one company that does a lot of design work and works in 3D, and we have a very unique 3D printing company up in Rexburg that works in materials that are not typical. So that might be a really good connection for them. And again, with the bioplastics. So most of these were in the technology or science and research area. There were a couple that were not, and some just all of them looking to get to break into the U.S. market. And so our story was, let us be your front door to the U.S. market. And, if Sakai had 10 friends that are 10 companies that we met with, each of those companies probably have 10 companies that, so again, it's just building that trust and experience with those so that we know that particularly from foreign countries tend to cluster. Once businesses start, they tend to cluster in that same area. So we're very hopeful that we've opened a door that really has moved quite quickly. The embassy in Japan said they were very surprised that we were able to close the Sakai deal as quickly as we did, because we met them in 2016, and we were able to close the deal in April 2017, and they had an iGEM in November of 2017, and then we're over there meeting with all of these companies, April 2018. I feel pretty good about it. This was the first time the state has ever done a foreign direct investment mission. All of their international missions have been trade. So this is the very first time that as a state we did a foreign direct investment mission. So
I do think it's important to point out that industry in general tends to cluster, and we know that. That's why you have Silicon Valley, and that's why you have Detroit, and that's why you have all these different industries in certain areas. And so and we also know that we're watching a bleed from California into mid-sized metropolitan areas like Salt Lake. But what we're finding out now is that those areas are becoming more and more congested, and now they're looking to bleed into the next range, which positions Pocatello very nicely, which is why Northgate's really important, because we know that there are companies that are particularly interested in the I-15 corridor, and you're the first stop.
Yeah. I don't know. I was going to say, I don't know if it's in my lifetime, but I absolutely believe that this region has the potential to be the biggest region in the state, and it's because it's not isolated. It's got the Wasatch Front.
I have, on a different subject, the NuScale small modular reactors. My understanding is eventually, if those get built, that it's to provide power, but mostly to Utah, maybe a little bit to Bonneville County. But I'm curious, what exactly is the benefit to us economically?
So it's the same benefit that you see with all those federal programs on the desert. It's jobs, it's dollars that are infused back into your communities, which of course they put out their economic impact study every year to, you all have a copy of that from Idaho National Laboratory, and Florida is getting ready to do the same thing. They point out exactly how many dollars are spent by city. I think you're in the millions that are directly reinvested, and so it's that same impact. And there's the possibility of actually a supplier coming and setting up shop in Pocatello and supplying the small modular reactor, and that might be through the construction phase, which would be a 3 to 5 year commitment, or it may be a permanent supplier of one of their needs that would be indefinitely. So, and you need to remember that this is one of 12 small modular reactors set to be built. So it's an ongoing process, and they'll all be built here if that comes to fruition, which we are. You're right. I mean, you're 7 years away from that. But I have contact with the New Scale and UAMPS regularly, who are funding the project, and at this point, they're very committed. And I was just back meeting with some Senator Alexander, because it's always been said that we're kind of competing with Tennessee. Tennessee they've conceded. They said, Idaho is going to be first, and they're saying, look, we don't want to hear any more about first in line, first in kind. This is good for everyone. This is good globally, and it needs to happen, because a small modular reactor has the ability to power rural areas in Africa that don't have access to an electrical grid. They have the power to be, or they have the potential to be self-sufficient and, uninterrupted, safe generators of power. So it's where we need to go.
Thank you, Roger.
What do you see? We talked about what we're selling. What are some of our impediments to growth here? I want you to tell me what we need to be working on.
I will tell you, this is a national issue. It's a state issue. It's not just an Eastern Idaho issue. But if we can actually get a bit ahead of this, we will all be ahead of the game. But housing is a substantial problem. It is across the state. I'm hearing this in other areas too, nationally. Lack of inventory. Talent, of course, is at the absolute top of the list, and I'm convinced, and I'll tell you what, I was just talking to MC yesterday, and they're doing some things that they're actually doing a project on the underemployed in 3 different categories, and they've asked me to sit on their advisory board regarding this particular study, which I think it could be really helpful in how we apply that, so that you can find, you actually know, are you overqualified and underpaid? Are you just overqualified for the position? Are you underqualified?
And we know when unemployment's hovering at 2.9% that it's dangerously low, in the sense that it's not necessarily where you want to be, because we know that it looks good, it feels good, but we know that people are typically underemployed.
So I think that study is going to be, and MZ to take that on, I think is going to be of real help to us. But we were also talking about the fact that we have talent. We actually have the jobs, but what we have is we don't have the nexus of connecting that talent to the jobs. When we did the study for the millennial study, one of the biggest things that came out of that on why they leave is that they perceive there are no jobs. And we know that that's so. If we can figure out, what is that nexus, that would make a big difference. I think we also, and I see this now, and you hear this now a lot, not just within our state, but nationally, is this sense of place really makes a difference. Being able to brand yourself in a way that people see who you are, I think could make a difference. None of our communities really do. We're branding the region. Southern Idaho is branded all things food, but the communities within them. haven't really branded themselves of what is it, who we are. So I think that's another thing that a community can work on.
Sense of places of, oh, I'm sorry, go ahead, Brian.
So I would just add to that some other things that we mentioned in the last meeting. We do have to look at homegrown industry. Those are some faults that we have, certainly in the area. I would address the millennial issue, and I'll come back to that here in just a moment. But the other is that the infrastructure has to be sufficient in the communities to support that growth.
And Ryan, can I just interject and say, and when we say infrastructure, we have moved beyond water, sewer, sanitation. You have to add broadband and connectivity into that. And when we talk about tech companies relocating, they are more concerned about that. Their footprint with regard to water and sewer is minimal, but their consumption of broadband is immense.
No, I would just simply add to this, and these are, I personally believe these are co-related. And we mentioned this before. There needs to be a networking function, some means of support, whether it's Pocatello, whether it's Ready, whomever, that is the champion of a networking function for young entrepreneurs. Because I think, yes, we need to bring external industry in, but we also need to develop internal industry here. Because even if we have a low unemployment rate, the reality is we have a lot of underemployed individuals in the area who, quite frankly, with the right impetus, with the right opportunity, would, in fact, develop their own industry and would increase the tax base for the community. So I think those things have to play part and parcel with what Ready's doing. And so I think you can't always look for external sources of growth. You also have to look for means for those internal sources of growth.
Absolutely. In fact, in this region, the old adage is 80% of the new jobs come from existing business. And in this region, I would absolutely agree to that. And so, to your point, we have always taken care of I think it's just as important to take care of every business in the same way, whether it's an attraction or an expansion, a local expansion. I don't think you should show any difference in that respect.
But I think it's important for this organization to not only be an identifier of barriers, as you mentioned, but to start providing solutions and not saying this is how it has to be done, but being a resource to say this is what we're observing across the nation as effective solutions.
So I actually had a comment or a question, I guess, along those lines. It's probably been a year and a half ago, maybe, that I went to one of your presentations with the millennial study, and so it looks like here on your notes you have that you have completed that study. I'm just wondering, so what is the next step? Because I was impressed that you were doing the study and with some of the findings, but what are you doing with that information to help us bridge that issue that we're having?
Well, were you at the meeting that Hope presented?
I was.
Yeah.
So I'm an educator by profession. So I deal with a cross spectrum of students, millennials to seasoned professionals. What I don't remember Hope's last name. Morrow. Thank you. So she presented a picture of where millennials really sit, and that they feel disjointed with the community at large. And that's why I ultimately think that connection back to that networking. So I think the real answer here is I'm not sure that there's anything done yet that is concrete, but that doesn't mean that there aren't some inroads being attempted. So there's two parts to this, right? The first part is that you have to engage. You have to know, the community, the millennial demographic have to know that there are opportunities. That ultimately feeds back to a way of life, right? To the benefits of the place, but then the infrastructure components, and these are the things that allow these homegrown businesses and that draw people in. I'm sorry, I'm going to say this as nice as I can. If I can't get my Facebook, or maybe not Facebook, but my whatever, Twitter, as a young professional and I can't interconnect with the community at large, then they feel segregated. And I think that was the key point that Hope brought out in her presentation, that professionally they come to our communities and feel segregated from the communities and don't feel a part. And that is a danger that ultimately drives them from our communities versus keeping them.
And she is pretty passionate.
Quite so.
About really bringing what I would call high-performing millennials together to say, what can we do? How can we build this network? So what we've really done is we've kind of lit a little bit of a spark in this group that really is committed and I think excited to be a part of making a difference in this one space, in the millennial space. And so, again, it's being able to bring up new ideas and new ways of looking at things and getting folks excited about it. I mean, our organization, we're 2 to 3 people tops in the organization. It's not about us. It's about how can we help connect and facilitate other things and ideas that are going to help at the end of the day. I mean, I know this sounds corny as heck, but I do this, and I've been doing it for 17 years because it's up to me about the families and the communities of the people we serve. And I know it sounds hokey, but that's my end game. So how do we get there? So we've talked about the millennials. We've got Hope excited, who's hopefully going to get others excited and start to build some networks and make a difference here. And we've got, a whole country, small part of a country excited about what's happening over here. These are the kinds of things that if you generate and you get excited about, makes a difference in the end. Or we could just sit here and be, and just go on down the road.
So would it be that we need to have somewhat of an adjustment culturally? Because what I'm hearing from some of the young, well-educated millennials who are here is that they're looking to get out because they do not feel like they are appreciated and they do not feel like they have any group to relate to.
Yeah, that networking thing seems to be a really, really big problem for all of them. Everyone that we've talked to.
These are master's and PhD level millennials.
They don't feel like we're in an inclusive. They don't feel like we're an inclusive place. That's what I'm hearing.
Isn't there naturally a cultural shift between every generation? I just think we're there. We're on the cusp of that. It'll work itself out.
Is Hope a volunteer?
Department of Labor.
Department of Labor, okay. But her work with you and with millennials is?
Statistical.
Okay.
Which is what they're there for, so good. So before we leave, just really quick, Mayor and Council, I hear that we need better communication. I got that. But what else would you like to see from Ready that maybe you don't? And this is a good time to be candid. Can improve if we don't know.
May I jump in? I would like to know how aggressively we market ourselves through you guys. Like, how aggressively do you go out there and we're like, this is the spot, like what can we do to connect together so we all are on the same page? So we market, the region, Pocatello, really aggressively, because I think we need to get in a fast lane and bring that back to us.
Yeah, it's leveraging the resources, and that's one of the things that I think what is a real big benefit of having a regional group is because you are leveraging small resources and putting them in one pot so you get a bigger voice. Mm-hmm. That's why we have this bigger voice. That's why we have over 60 articles written about Eastern Idaho in 1 year all over the place. But you're right. What we need to do is to better leverage, and we're working on that with attempting to work on that with Banning Development because they are only focused on you, meaning this area. So how can we leverage that message with the regional message to make it more aggressive for your spot?
And we need everybody at the table at the same time. And I just saw that work so well in Cincinnati at the Site Selectors Guild, and Little Rock, Arkansas is a perfect example. So those site selectors they're an elite group, and there's only so many of them globally. And they're at that guild meeting with everybody, speed dating essentially, trying to find, and they've got their clients they're trying to place. And Little Rock, Arkansas is sitting at the same table as me, and they're 6 strong, and they're from all the communities. They have their regional economic development person there, and then they have all the communities sitting there. And when the site selectors came to the table, every single one of them knew them already because they market and force, and they're working the room, and everybody's there, and everybody's on the same point, on same message. And so when they sat down, they said, "Oh, Little Rock, where we are a little bit disjointed still. Everybody's in the room, like Jan likes to say, but we're not all working together like we should be. It should be Bannock and Ready and Bingham and Scott Johnson, because they don't have an ED unit, but they have an ED person. We should all be sitting at the table together with the same voice."
So that'd be our task force.
Yes.
It's pretty powerful. But, again, Rome wasn't built in a day. We are only about 2.5 years into this, and I can't even tell you. You can imagine when I'm getting ready to tell you this. You can imagine this happens a lot. I get a lot of people come up to me, "When are we going to get our Chobani?" And I said, "Well, we got Chobani at year 10, so we're not quite 3 years in here, so it may be another 7, unless we." Can accelerate that. So this is a long game. Economic development's a long game.
Absolutely.
And anybody that thinks it's not, if you want to just put your hat in and see what you're going to get for a month, a year, or 2 years, it's not going to happen. You have to understand this is the long game. And so we are building that. I'm surprised, to be honest, that I think we have a credible platform, regional platform, already for Eastern Idaho, on which we can launch a lot of really good initiatives. And it does not have to be just economic development. It can be talent. It can be
well, it's education, it's networking.
But it's a
whole picture.
Yeah, but it's a platform from which we can launch this message. We now have a megaphone instead of a bunch of mics, and that's what the real value of this regional organization can and will be. It will be that megaphone for the region and for your communities. And that's, but it's just gonna, it's gonna take some time. But if everybody really, jumps out of that wagon and says, well, hey, let's all get pushing from the back end, we're gonna get to the top of the hill faster.
Okay, sounds great. Thank you.
Sounds to me like what you're saying is we need a force that coordinates the networking, particularly between the talent pool that is existent and the jobs that are available. Once we stop some of that leakage, then we create the potential for us to grow more rapidly because we retain even greater talent pool, and we got them working here versus
that is a silver bullet. I'm telling you, if that silver bullet had been already developed, everybody in this country, because we're not the only ones in this situation, would be using it. We're missing that nexus, and if we could figure that out, we would be ahead of the game. Don't you agree?
So are we suggesting we need a recruiter that puts different businesses and business and talent on the same?
Can I answer that? I will speak professionally here. I think what ultimately the city has to have is an economic development individual or committee, whatever that may be. And that has to be somebody who understands the statistics, understands the demographics, understands the limitations. So with any picture that you create from a marketing perspective, you know inherently where the weaknesses are, and you play to your strengths.
Right.
A city is no different. A region is no different in that regard. So that would be my recommendation.
Right.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for spending the morning with us.
It was fascinating.
Yeah.
Yeah, sure
Actually, it was.
Sure that it was.
The hammer effect of the water.
I did tell Dana, though, I said when our animal shelter came up, I said, I hope this isn't going to be a sad story because we're both pretty deep into the tech thing, you know what I mean? So that was a happy
Okay. All right, so let's thank you. Let's go ahead and continue on. Don't know if we have a lunch here or not, but
12:15 is when it's supposed to be.
okay, so 12:15. So we'll see if no way we're getting through any of this stuff in less than an hour apparently today. So we'll start this. We may end up stopping it and starting back over again. It sounds like. We'll move on to agenda item number 7: updated city services request management system and citywide app proposal. City staff will be present to discuss a proposal from City Source regarding a new service request management system, SRMS. The current system is over 25 years old and very inefficient. The city's app is also very static and not well utilized. City Source has a mobile platform that provides an app that would significantly improve the city's SRMS while providing a city-wide app that will be beneficial to city employees, citizens, and visitors to Pocatello. We couldn't have shortened that anywhere.
I'm just a very verbose
I'm reading a book up here.
Mayor, Council, thank you for letting me have the opportunity to present this to you. We'll try to make it somewhat brief. We presented a portion of it in our budget presentation a few weeks ago and told you we'd be meeting here to further discuss it. And so we're going to present to you City Source's solution to a problem that needs fixing at this point in time. Take you kind of through a little bit of the history of the situation. Our current service request management system is 20 to 25 years old. It's very awkward in the way it works. Right now, we receive a request from a citizen via either a phone call, email, letter, or some other means. And then we have to act on that. We have 10 days usually to get a response back to that citizen. Last year, we handled a little over 170 of these type of requests. Majority of these requests are public works related. There's a hole in the road, the sidewalk's cracked, there's a light out. We also get them suggestions from, for example, I get one every once in a while that'll say the city needs to be running their own fiber system like Ammon does, and so we have to respond to all those requests. The process essentially is the mayor's office gets that request in one of those formats, then they have to put it into our existing management system. And usually then prints out the request from the system because it's not interconnected to anything that we have. She has to turn around and scan that printout, put it into either a PDF or other type of format, and she emails it to the appropriate department. That department then needs to, then she manually tracks that through that 10-day process. The system doesn't even allow her to track it. She has to. She essentially has a ledger type sheet that she just manually keeps track of these as they come in and go out. If the service request is related to a public works function, it goes to the appropriate department head over there. They then enter into their tracking system, which is Lucidity. And Lucidity is the system that manages most of their workload, their supplies, tracks their hours so that they can do the proper coding and everything into the proper projects that they're working on. Once the service request is completed, the department then inputs it into the system and marks it to print. And when the mayor's office then goes into the system and opens it up, it will print out for them. They then turn around and have to notify the citizen as to what we did. Sometimes it's scanning that printout back into the system and then emailing it to them or putting it into an envelope and mailing it to the individuals. And so that's how that current system operates. So Ann came to us several months ago wanting to replace the system. In fact, I think she's been talking about it since I got here 3 years ago. But she's got a little bit more adamant about it. And as we looked into it, we thought this might be an opportunity not to only get a service request management system in place, but to get an overall platform that would solve many of our other issues. So one of the key things we thought we might be able to replace with it is our current city app. When I got here a little over 3 years ago, one of the first things the mayor asked me to do was to fix the current app. It had stopped working. And when I got hold of one of the two developers, it turns out that it was a partnership that had dissolved, and the one partner that had all the code and stuff kind of left the area, leaving our current developer to go in and recode it and get us an app back up and running. So he rewrote that code, we got it back up and running, and it's been working ever since. If you're familiar with it, it's not much more than a directory to the city. It does provide access to our agendas and a handful of other things. There's actually a reporting tool in there if you have an issue that you want to report, but it's not tied to anything. So if something comes in on that, Ann has to pull it down and enter it into our system. When it needs to be updated, every time we do an update, every time the council changes, every time a department head quits, something changes on there, I have to get with the developer, tell him what the changes are. He makes the changes. He has to then resubmit it to the Apple Store and to the Google Play Store, and it can take up to a week to 10 days for that change to take effect. Google Play is fairly quick. Apple really every time they do it, they analyze to make sure there's no malware or other issues with it. So it takes quite a while to do it. So it doesn't work as efficiently as we would like it to do. One other thing that we have learned with our city webpage, which is a little bit separate, but our recent metrics show that over 50% of our hits that are coming on our website are coming in from mobile devices, such as phones, indicating that we're at an ideal time to get an app that can meet the needs of our users a little bit more effectively. So what did we do? We pulled together a team here in City Hall and around that consisted of several members of my IT department, the mayor's office, primarily Ann, Logan from our PIO office. We had, I think it was Kerry Farnsworth and Owen Campion out of Public Works, and then Dennis Hill out of GIS. And we met with 3 different companies. The first company we met with was My Civic or My Community App. They kind of go by 2 different names depending on where you're talking to them from. They are Superion's preferred third-party provider for this type of an app. Superion, of course, is our key ERP here in the city, enterprise resource management program. It's the one that does all of our finances and everything like that. They came in with moderate costs. They're close to the one we recommend, but they are a little bit lower. However, those costs did not include what Superion would charge us in addition to them, so I'm not convinced that they would have been the lowest cost or cheaper than the one we're proposing. Ann's biggest concern with the My Civic app was the inability to route their service requests back and forth to her so that she could maintain control. Essentially, if the department had closed out the app or the service request in their app, it would immediately go back to the citizen that initiated the request without giving Ann that opportunity to interface and be the go-between to make sure the response is correct. The second app we looked at was relatively cheap. It was called C-Click-Fix. It was not a platform. It was literally a service request management system that was very restricted. It pretty much was an app that would be on a citizen's phone. They would see a problem out in the community. They would be able to take a picture of it and report it. And it would come to us, we would respond, and it would go back. And that's about all it was. It was very stovepiped. So it really didn't meet our needs for an overall platform. We went to City Sourced. They were the third company that we looked at, and they were the ones that met all of our requirements that we had at the time. It maintains all the routing control that Ann wanted in a service request management system. They also integrate well, and they have integrated in the past. I think I gave you one of their flyers or brochures as a handout, or it was in the original packet. They interface with Lucity. In fact, they're a preferred provider of Lucity because they are, when I show you the proposal and the cost and stuff, we actually get a discount because of the relationship with Lucity. They interface with Superion/SunGuard. They've interfaced in the past with Civic Plus, which is our web company that manages our website. It interfaces well with Esri, which is the user interface for the Lucity, or our GIS platform. So it interfaces with everything that we needed to interface with. It did come in at the highest cost, but it also came in meeting all of our requirements. What do you get with them? You get a custom branded app to start with. You get an app that goes on the phone. They remove all of their branding, so you don't even see the word City Source anywhere on it. We get to maintain control of this. We get to maintain control of the colors, the pictures. When we make a change here, and it would probably be Rick as our web designer and as our social media expert, when he makes a change and he clicks send on it, within probably a minute, it's activated, it's up on the cloud, it's in the servers up there, and the next time a user clicks on it, that's what they see and that's what they get, which is a great function. The other good thing about all of this is it's all the data that's transferred, everything that's done is encrypted and secure as it goes up back and forth between the servers in the cloud and the users and their apps. It interfaces great with Esri and our GIS functionality, and we'll show you some of this. I don't have a full detailed walk you through an actual app, but we're going to show you some screenshots. But when a user is out in the city and he sees that pothole in the road and he takes a picture of it, it interfaces, it picks up the geolocation, and when it goes into the system and it comes back to us, our people will be able to go to the maps and things and know exactly what we have there and what the conditions are. Again, so the individual's walking down the road, he sees a street light out, he sees a problem with the roadway, he sees something wrong with the sidewalk, he can report it. He can take a picture, he can just manually enter it in, and can send us the information. So it starts off with the app. The platform is available on Android, Google, Apple Android, as well as HTML5 and all those other things that you'll need to do. It's a very secure platform. It resides on the Microsoft Azure platform. That's what gives you some of that security that's up there. It's accessible anywhere you go. Citizens will have it on their phones. The employees will have it available on their phones, so that if they're out in the field and they're addressing these things, they'll be able to have access to that data right from their phones or their tablets. And again, it has that key integration that we're looking for. Lots of different cities. I'm going to show you exactly how many they have out there, but you can see this. These. Okay, so here's a screenshot that kind of gives you an idea of what you get. Citizen opens it up, and ours doesn't have to look like this. These are just examples of some of the things that they provided us. Right at the top, they have service requests, so the citizen could click on that, and when they do that, it opens it up. You have the news and events you could plug into this. You have social media that you can do. You have different quick links that you could provide. So if somebody's going in and says they have an issue with the city, they can report it right here. In this case, there's some drop-down menus to kind of generalize what it is. It gives them an opportunity to tell them where it's at. You can set it up so that they can take photos, they can create videos, they can do all kinds of different ways to present the information back to us so that we know where it is, what it is, and what the overall concern is. It pinpoints it on the map for the individual so they can say, yeah, that is where I'm at, and then they can tell that it's what they wanted to do. So after the citizen is reported, it comes back into this web portal, back to the city, back to us and our managers, and it gives us a chance to see everything that's been reported. It marks it on the maps. You can see where the pictures are and things, and you can click on those and open them up and get additional details. Zooms in on the map. It tells us if it's been reported before, if it hasn't been reported, and what our response is. Gives us an opportunity to add our responses and take additional photos and go back to the citizens so that they eventually will know that what they have asked has been completed. City Source is again an overall platform, and we're not asking to use everything at one time, because everything you ask for, they're going to charge a little bit for. You'll see that in their proposal a little bit. But to start with, it's going to meet our service request needs that we have. Down the road, when we're ready to go to mobile payments, it'll interface well. This is where it's key that it interfaces with Superion, because if it doesn't interface with Superion, it can't get into our financial management system. And so it's great that they do that. They interface with Paymentus, which is the third party that works with Superion to allow for mobile payments. So that's something down the road that will be available to us. If there's enhanced tools to help with your permitting and your licensing tools that we could look at down the road. They interface very well with application developers and independent service vendors, so that they can bring their tools in and do those things that need to be done. There are some great tools here for notifying your citizens. There's a capability to geofence to say, look, I want to send a notification to people that live in this zip code. I want to send a notification to people that live in this neighborhood. And those are tools that down the road we could look at to implement using this platform. There are activated maps that we could use to tell people where to vote, where we have water outages, where we have different things going on. There's a knowledge-based tool that could be implemented that instead of people always having to call the city and ask the questions, we could put information more available out there that they could search these knowledge bases and go out and learn the things that they need to learn. There's another tool that you can set up that would tell people when their garbage is going to be picked up, when their recycling is going to be picked up, when they're going to get their roads plowed, where the trucks are, and those kind of things. These are all capabilities that are built into this platform that would give us room to grow it and develop it even further. Again, these are some other the offerings they give us, the geofencing notifications, which are great tools where you can notify neighborhoods or areas. They can even turn it on where, as an individual who has this app on their phone and they're driving into an area that's within the geofence, their notification could potentially pop up as they enter into an area that has an active notification going on. We talked about the payment capability, and it's just a great opportunity for the citizens to be engaged. There are push polls and different things that this tool would allow us to use down the road. Give you an idea how big they are, we want to make sure we weren't getting into a company that was brand new out there and that this was something that they were a startup company. Sometimes it's a good time to trust a startup company, and an incident like this is probably not the best time to do it. They've got over 50 million residents that they service in 10 different countries. They mentioned California, 45 cities, the entire 311 system for the country of Panama is on their system. Abu Dhabi, Dubai is on it. The Gold Coast in Australia uses it. If I've got the connection I need, I wanted to. So if you go to the Google Play Store and you open City Source, or you type in the word City Source, I found 84, 85 apps, different cities and stuff that you can see use the City Source app. Everywhere from Salt Lake to California, LA, back east, all over. It doesn't matter. What I found interesting, and at first was a little disheartening, is if you look at the ratings, some of them are pretty good, and some of them are not so good. But what really got my eye was when I went in and I looked at the comments and things. Almost every time there was these negative remarks, it wasn't for the app. It was for the city's response. I sent in an issue about a pothole. They closed it out. I went out and that pothole was still there. I sent in a concern about a street light being out. I never heard back from them. Those are the negative comments that got some of these negative scores going. When it was related to the app, it was usually because it was an older version of the app, and a lot of those were fixed. If we decide to go this way, I plan on going through a lot of these comments, though, deleting them out and making sure that we're working with the company saying, look, this was a complaint from this city's app. I want to make sure it's not a complaint on our app down the road. So kind of give you an idea of how widespread they are. So that's pretty much the app. The proposal that they came back to us with after everybody in our group decided that this is the product that they really liked. We got them to give us their proposal. Again, they have all these out-of-the-box integrations. Again, the key ones for us were Civic Plus, Esri, Lucity, and SunGuard Public Sector, which is now Superion. So those were key integrations that we were looking at. They included that. So this was their initial proposal to us. This would include platform support for the iPhone, Android, HTML5, and web widgets. Licensing is unlimited. It doesn't matter how many people download it or want to utilize it. It's our branding. They remove all of their branding. It allows us to set up the security rules, the team management, who can see what, the workflow. All that is built according to our desires. They provide us unlimited email and telephone support, which is really good. And it includes 2 integrations. The integrations they propose for us are the Esri integration and the Lucity one, I think. We'll see that down here. Their initial costs are $3,500 for the setup fee with an annual maintenance of $15,900 with a total first year fee of $19,400. Optional things that we talked about that they offer, like waste reminders would be $2,500 to set that up and almost $3,700 a year to keep it going. The knowledge base, $1,500 to set up, $2,100 to operate. Again, these are just options. We weren't looking at these initially unless we're directed to go this direction. There are some console add-ons for the staff, but I didn't see a need for any of those to be given to us. So the end pricing with the discount, they give us a $500 discount on the setup and $900 a year discount on the annual recurring, giving us an initial cost of $3,000 and an annual recurring cost of $15,000. And that was their proposal. So that's the down and dirty. I know it was quick. I didn't call in the company to do an online demonstration that they did for us, but the staff that was there really liked what they saw. I think it's a way to go. I think it's an opportunity for the city to be a little more transparent, to provide information a little more easily to those that are looking to use a tool like this, so that it's available, it's at their fingertips, and it really does resolves Ann's problem of a 20 to 25-year-old system, simplifying the process, ensuring that we're answering the service requests that are out there, doing it in a manner that meets not only the citizens' requirements and Ann's requirements, but enables the staff to interact and better track these things without so much duplication of effort that we have in our current system.
And I might add, Council, very quickly that Ann had the day off, or she would be here with us, but she wanted me to let you know that she's absolutely very supportive of this. This will be an app that will help us greatly in the city.
Mr. Mayor, can I ask a question?
Sure.
I love this. I think this is absolutely the way we need to go. And you mentioned potential for down the road. I mean, this is great to address the issue with service requests right now. But what I was interested in and what we've talked about before is having kind of one-stop shopping for citizens, where they could eventually, pay their bills, get their dog license, do everything, have an account where they could just do all that stuff. With the options that we could add down the road, is that possible?
Yes,
that
I believe
they have their own
possible.
account? Okay.
We'll still keep our website up, because websites provide a little bit different feature and capability and are a little more robust when you're on the right platform to utilize them. The app gives you that mobile capability. Yes, it will be able to take payments. Licensing, it should be able to handle. And everything you just mentioned should all be able to do there. It all will come at a cost. Each one of those will be kind of a new integration, a new module and things.
Will that eventually, if we went that way, would that be compatible with the website? Can the website do that as well? And you could do it mobily or?
Yes, ma'am. It interfaces fully with Civic Plus and with Superion, and then Civic Plus interfaces with Superion. It would all come together as a capability that would be able to be utilized no matter where you were at.
Because my concern in the past is that, all the departments have their own software and you can use their software or platform to do one thing, but there's no one place to do it all. So I'd love to see us go in that direction.
And one of the keys will be an online a system that allows for the online payment system. Because you're right now we have, like Parks and Rec utilizes one system, Animal Shelter uses another system, and that they don't come well together. But right now they're utilized that way so that the money that comes in can then be put into the appropriate accounts and things. I believe that Paymentus, who has done this with dozens, if not hundreds of cities throughout the U.S. working with Superion, has already resolved those issues, because I can't imagine other cities don't have the same concern about making sure that money that comes in to this fund gets put into that fund when it gets deposited. We just haven't had Joyce and I just have not had the time to sit down and really thoroughly discuss it with the Paymentus company and have to give a full-blown, this is how it works. So.
Sounds good. Any other questions?
That's great.
I think it looks good, and unless the council disagrees, I think we ought to bring it forward so that we can consider it at a council meeting.
I'm not available for the first one in June, but I will be available for the second one in June.
There's not a second one in June, so it'll be the first one in July.
Which is fine, because the budget's really in for next year's, unless I can find earlier budget. It does take them 10 to 16 weeks about from the day they get the contract to do their turnkey solution. So we're looking at fall timeframe at the earliest for this to be made available.
Okay. Sounds good.
Okay.
Awesome.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, I know that the city council is just dying to go through this budget amendment, agenda item 8, but I think we're probably going to have a break for lunch. That is here, and then we will come back and we'll start again at our agenda item 8 for the budget amendment, unless the council wants to go through it quickly now.
How quick is quick?
Well, today an hour's been pretty quick, so.
Let's take a break.
Okay, we will.
Animal shelter quick.
Animal shelter quick. If it were animal shelter quick, it'd be awesome.
When did you want to reconvene, sir?
So why don't we come back at, give us a half hour? About a half hour, and we'll be good to go. Thank you. Thank you for joining us this afternoon for the continuation of our study session. We have 2 more items. However, for your information, I am going to poll item number 9, and we will discuss that later. So in the interest of time, we've got some council members that have some things and some commitments that they have got to get to. And so I'm just giving forewarning to the people presenting the budget to be prepared to move quickly as well after this meeting's over. With that, we'll jump into agenda item number 8, is a proposed June budget amendments for fiscal year 2018. Finance Department staff will be present will present to council detailed information on proposed fiscal year 2018 June budget amendments for public hearing to be held on June 7, 2018. Ashley.
Good afternoon, Ashley Walsh, Senior Accountant. I'm going to go through the June budget amendments. If you guys have any questions, I will try my best to answer them. So there are 50 listed amendments that are affecting 15 funds. We are going to put a notice in the paper on the 23rd and the 30th of May. We're going through the study session today to give you guys a little bit more information about what is being requested. And then the public hearing is June 7th, and the ordinance consideration will be June 7th to publish the full ordinance. So we're going to start with Mayor and Council Department, Youth Council Service Project and T-shirts for members, $135. The authority to refund monies for records requests received in excess of actual costs, $614. And then Coffee with the Mayor, they receive sponsorships for this for $408. And then iCrimp sponsorship for the mayor to travel to AGRIP conference, $1,167. So all these are covered by additional revenues that have come in. Police Department, there was 2 unplanned retirements. But we do have money available in the retirement payout fund for those. So we're just asking for authority to be able to spend that. And travel reimbursement from state of Idaho for car seat training and school violence prevention conference, $1,324. And then the U.S. Marshals Service, they granted money for body armor and binoculars, $25,215. And CopLink shared expense with Bandit County and City of Chubbuck, $4,787. That's the money that we're getting from them. And then we need to recognize a donation of a Dare Jeep for $44,627. There was a weapons upgrade that was reimbursed by police officers for $1,227. And then class tuition for an instructor development course, which is reimbursed by the state of Idaho for $774. Fire department, they received a donation for a trailer to mitigate spills occurring in or near the waterways for $85,000. And a donation for fire simulation software from the Idaho Fire Chiefs for $1,650. And then Animal Shelter has a donation received from PetSmart to purchase supplies for surgical suite for $50,000. All right, street department. We were going to use reserves to transfer money to the Street Federal Aid Project Fund for the completion of the Benton and Second project and the repairs to the Center Street underpass. So that's $262,457. And the street department was also going to use their reserves to purchase salt brine equipment to be able to make their own salt brine for road winter maintenance, and that's $75,000. Cemetery is going to use reserves to purchase a riding mower, $17,500. Airport, there was an exchange. So one of their tenants did repairs to a building for them, and they're going to exchange for rent, so they're not going to have to pay rent, and that's $199,144. We still have to recognize the expenses if we did ourselves, though. Library, they received a donation of shelves from Friends of the Library for $29,500, and then there's an increase in electrical utilities of $11,620. They were going to do an electrical upgrade. We were supposed to be able to recognize those savings in fiscal year 18. Unfortunately, it got postponed, and so we're not going to be able to realize those savings this year. Transit is asking, they are receiving grants, and they have money in the capital reserve account to purchase 3 buses for urban demand response. That's $391,250. Sanitation is going to use reserves to upgrade the wash bay at the new facility. Ambulance had a planned retirement, which required additional authority, which we have in the retirement savings fund. And then fleet management. Okay, we need budget authority to start this fund in fiscal year 18. We were going to use capital contingency funds to do that. So $52,236 is for the wages and benefits for the fleet manager. And then the fleet management software is $110,000, and then budget authority just for them to be able to work and get what they need to get started is going to be $30,764. So I know we had kind of already talked about that one when we talked about fleet. Utility billing is asking for budget authority for the purchase of standing desks and accessories, $3,050. They're going to use reserves for that. And they're also going to use reserves for the purchase of the Water Smart software, $46,700. We did also put this in the fiscal year 19 budget. They were hoping that they could possibly get it done in FY18. So if she does it in 18, then she won't be able to spend it again in 19. We'll just do a budget holdback or something. But we just wanted to make sure if she's able to do it this year that she has the budget authority to do that. The Wellness Fund received a donation from Aetna of $100,000. They're going to use it for wellness incentives. And then the Wellness Fund is going to use reserves to facilitate the conversion of the medical data from Aetna to Blue Cross, which is $20,180. And then we built the Education Benefit Fund, so we're moving authority for education benefit from specific department divisions into this fund, $56,417, so that we can more closely monitor that. And then the Street Federal Aid Projects Fund, budget authority to expend the monies to repair Center Street, $250,000, and that's coming from street reserves. The Capital Acquisition Fund, we need to be able to transfer monies to transit for the purchase of those buses for $80,000. And the retirement payout fund needs authority to transfer the additional savings for the planned and unplanned retirements of $56,223. So this is just a total by fund of all the budget amendments that we have for June. They total $2,165,192. There will be no action immediately following the hearing on June 7th council meeting. The action will be taken in the same meeting, but at the end of the meeting during the ordinance section. Is there any questions on any of those?
You did a great job.
I thought
Did she breathe?
we had told utility billing to bring back other companies, other proposals from other companies besides Watersmart.
They said that was the only one, right? Didn't they look into it or something?
I think they looked into, we have our,
I think that's the software they liked.
it was a software they liked, and I don't know that they looked into any others. Yeah, will you please? Yes, please. I know we instructed them to. I think that they did, but I don't think that there were any that
We're comfortable.
were comparable and did what we needed them to do, if I remember right. But I don't remember if that's the case or not. Now that you ask, I'm thinking.
I don't know where I heard that from, but I remember somebody saying that.
Somebody said, yeah. Any other questions on?
I think Brian told you.
Yeah, maybe I told you. Maybe it came from me, and I don't know what I'm talking about with it. Are there any other questions that for Ashley on the budget amendments?
She's not available right now. She's on lunch.
Okay. Well, we'll get an answer to that question then, and make sure you get an answer to that before June 7th.
Got time.
We got a little bit of time, but we'll do that.
Okay.
Okay, any other questions? Okay, super. Thank you.
With that speed, we could have done it before lunch.
I know, we should have done that one before lunch.
We didn't know you were going to be that fast.
That's,
We
she
think
doesn't
budget
waste
and we
time.
didn't think
She didn't know
longer
we weren't going to ask a million
That's right. That's right. That's right. Okay, so with that, thank you very much for joining us for our study session. As I said, Agenda 9 I've pulled, and we will discuss that again next week or next month with that. So we are adjourned from our study session meeting.